All right. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. It is currently 1:08 a.m. And of course, today's date is the 8th of May, 2025. A lot to unpack, but we're going to make it really fast, quick, so everybody can get on with their lives. Okay. Here we go. So, the OG, the 45th, and now the 47th, is saying that there may be a huge deal in the morning. It is currently morning, but not bright outside. So hopefully it's China, because a lot of Americans would hope it is China. But even if it's not China, at least there is some sort of trade deal being inked in the White House. That's what everybody is praying for. That's what everybody hopes for. And hopefully, most importantly, we hope it's China. All right. With that being said, we're going to start with this Supreme Court intervention, which means Supreme Court allows Trump to ban trans troops. Of course, Pete Hegseth spoke about this. He said no more trans, no more woke, no more all that stuff in the military. But listen to what CNN has to say.
The main argument, Elena, that the Trump administration is making here is that that allowing transgender troops to serve hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, have said there's nothing in fact to back up what the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country, where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
Scott, if they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, I mean, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. I mean, regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we gotta respect that. Under our Constitution.
But I mean, to her point, if there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and I'm just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I mean, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no. No, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that, but it's
excuse me.
still
Well, I'm glad you.
I'm going to leave this one
But
alone
hold on,
today.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? I mean, you just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
I mean, are you really going to go down this ridiculous
I'm just.
road?
I'm sorry.
This is ridiculous. It is a ridiculous argument.
Well, okay.
The
Consider what they've already said
president
about
and the
DEI.
secretary of defense. The president and secretary of defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted by this. That is their opinion, And that is the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So that's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander-in-chief yourself. But until you do, he's the commander-in-chief.
I have to just say, I didn't hear an answer to the hypothetical, right? I just didn't hear it. I didn't. I mean, okay. The definition of discrimination, according to the American Psychological Association, discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between, prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will say...
Do you believe that race and... Are you saying that the quality of race and the quality of transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking, you guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well, so under the Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards, they meet the intellectual standards, they have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life for this country. So many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say the other thing, or there's a few things that bother me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong. That also happens, right?
Okay.
Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights.
All
Were
right,
they
here we
right?
go.
No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a military or this is a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for black people already when it comes to the military, suddenly when you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal fighting?
He should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country. And it's really kind of ironic considering he dodged the draft that he suddenly has an opinion about.
The good news is, and Elena, you pointed this out, this is going through the court system. The other side has the opportunity to present evidence.
Except for tomorrow, there should be thousands of people who wake up and get processed out. The harm will be done.
And I certainly understand that. But again, there's still an opportunity for it to continue through the proper process.
Right, but they wake up tomorrow without a job, being removed from their commands. Operational readiness will be impacted. And so there's commands that are going to be left without leaders. There's going to be real life implications for theaters around the world where our military is protecting this country. And for what end?
So Elena, I guess my point is, if a strong enough evidence is presented throughout the court process, all the way up to SCOTUS, and it's ultimately believed, okay, hey, the other side has enough evidence where we can't rule in favor of the executive, then the executive, I believe, would respect that decision. But we have to allow this thing to move forward and see what was
your experience in the military like? Did you serve after you had transitioned, or?
No, I served before my transition.
So you weren't in during your at all?
No. I came to know that I was transgender while I was serving with a top secret and above clearance. And I knew that I couldn't pass my polygraph test. And so I had to make a tough decision. Do I stay true to my character, my values, my integrity, or do I choose to leave this role and live a private life? And so I think that the challenge is that the injunction was to allow people to continue to serve while the courts played out. Right? So there would be no harm done to these folks. giving the courts an opportunity to work through these issues so people wouldn't lose their jobs. Now they're going to wake up tomorrow without jobs. They can't just come back in for serving 22 years, waiting for this court case to work its way through for 6, 9 months, 2 years.
So you hadn't, so was there a prohibition on you transitioning while you were in the military?
Back in that time, there was a ban against serving if you were, the don't ask, don't tell policy.
This was in the mid-90s.
This was in the mid-90s. Yeah.
So, but can I ask a question? Because I think this is relevant. You know, Elena was serving, left because of this policy. How many people is it okay to lose who are competent, who are doing their jobs because for reasons like that? I mean, at the time, she could have been a gay or lesbian, and it probably would have been the same result as well. I mean, I think that's why ultimately they ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
I mean, I think
discrimination.
I think ultimately the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary of Defense have to decide comprehensively about troop levels, troop readiness, and unit cohesion, and overall recruitment. They're actually quite happy with recruitment right now.
But there's never been a military standard that transgender people have not met. So the military standards have not been lowered for people who are transgender. And I think that's the issue here. And the courts that have looked at this issue in depth have said this is pure animus, that there is no evidence of this. So if you actually take the rhetoric out of it and look at the issue at its heart, all the courts say the same thing. So I think that's the travesty here.
I believe the president has the constitutional right to do this, and I also think you have the constitutional right to make your case on it, and everybody's going to be in court about it, and I think you should continue to make your case.
But you also talked about unit cohesion, and that's exactly the same kind of argument that they made against integrating the military when Harry Truman did it. I'm sorry, it's the same argument. It's the same.
I mean, is she wrong about that though? I mean,
she's been wrong.
She's right about that.
She's never been right. That lady has never been right.
I'm aware. Because of unit cohesion. So now you're saying gay people
can I just? We only have a couple seconds. Michael, I see that you're frustrated that she made that argument, but is she wrong that unit cohesion was used as an excuse to keep the military segregated for a long time?
I think we should
and also don't ask, don't tell when it comes to discriminating against gay and lesbian people.
Man,
we should focus on the issue at hand. That's what I think.
Same argument.
But no, we should focus on the issue at hand. I don't know why we keep bringing up race. Let's just focus on the issue at hand.
Look, it's race, sexual orientation. We've seen this twice, right?
Man, no.
In 2 major junctures for the military. I'm just wondering if she is drawing parallels here between the arguments that are being made to maintain this policy.
I reject those parallels. That's my answer. I reject the parallels. I think they're ludicrous parallels.
Do you feel like you had a choice in your life as to what you were going to do? Or
no.
No, of course not.
No.
The same way that I didn't have a choice to be born who I was, the same way you didn't have a choice to be born who you were. So why do we get exclusions and she doesn't?
I didn't say that Elena should be excluded.
Okay, why under this president's policy?
My opinion here is let it work itself through the court system.
And I have no problem with that, but just don't fire people while it's working through the courts. That's what these injunctions were doing, was letting it work through the courts. And the Supreme Court, I think, really just delegitimized itself even further today. And I think that's a challenge for all of this country when we don't have the checks and balances of the courts, checking the executive power, and Congress checking the executive power, and all of those things. Because at the end of the day, right now in the military, you can be a white supremacist, a known white supremacist, and serve in this military, but you cannot be transgender and serve in this military. That's a fact.
Okay, here we go. Race baiting. All right, Pakistan and India
is rising from Indian military strikes on Pakistan, raising fears that 2 nuclear-armed rivals are moving closer to war. A Pakistani military spokesperson tells Reuters at least 26 civilians have been killed and 46 injured. India claims to have targeted terrorist infrastructure in several locations inside Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. India insists its missile strikes were, quote, focused and precise and designed to be non-escalatory in nature. But Pakistan rejects that claim. Pakistan also says it shot down 5 Indian Air Force jets and a drone. CNN cannot independently confirm those claims. And this just in, according to a senior Indian defense source, Pakistani shelling in Indian-administered Kashmir has now killed 8 people. These back and forth attacks come about 2 weeks after gunmen massacred 26 tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir. India quickly accused Pakistan of supporting terrorists in the region. Pakistan denied any responsibility. The two sides have also been exchanging shelling and gunfire across their disputed border. This is the first time since 2019 that India has struck inside Pakistani territory. The attacks in Punjab province are the deepest since the 1971 war. And we want to go live now to CNN's Paula Hancock following developments from Abu Dhabi. Good to see you, Paula. So what is the latest on these developments in the wake of India's military strikes on Pakistan?
Well, Rosemary, India says that it carried out these strikes in the early hours of Wednesday morning, starting at 1:05 a.m., and they say that they lasted 25 minutes. Now, from the Indian side, we are hearing that they made sure they did not target civilians or any economic or military infrastructure. From the Pakistan side, we are hearing that simply wasn't the case. So first of all, the statement from the Indian Defence Ministry. They said, quote, "Our actions have been focused, measured and non-escalatory in nature. No Pakistani military facilities have been targeted. India has demonstrated considerable restraint in selection of targets and method of execution." But what we are hearing from the Pakistan side is that civilians and also mosques have been targeted. Officials saying that some 6 locations these strikes took place and at least 26 were killed. They say civilians, including children, at least one as young as 3 years old, also saying that some 46 have been injured. Now, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said that he considers this an act of war, saying that Pakistan has the right to give a befitting reply. Now, Pakistan also claims that it has shot down 5 jets and a drone of the Indian Air Force, also claiming that 3 of them are Rafale jets. This is a very sophisticated French-made jet, which is really a prized asset of the Indian Air Force. We have heard from the Indian military since those claims, but they have not engaged with those claims at all. CNN cannot confirm or deny that is the case. And we are also hearing that there has been more cross-border fire from Pakistani-controlled Kashmir into the Indian-administered Kashmir. This Wednesday morning as well, in retaliation to those strikes, another 8 have been killed in those. We understand on the Indian side of the administered disputed territory, there are evacuations taking place to more safe areas. It is of great concern that these 2 nuclear-powered countries are seeing this increased tension. Countries around the world, the US, China and the United Nations, calling both to show restraint.
India carrying out the deepest strike in Pakistan in more than 50 years. Video shared on social media shows the moment of impact from one of those strikes. India says it was targeting, quote, terrorist infrastructure in the wake of a tourist massacre in the disputed territory of Kashmir. Pakistan has denied any involvement in that. Now, Pakistan's military says India's strikes killed at least 26 civilians, including children. And security sources there say 5 Indian Air Force jets and drones were shot down during this attack. Now, Pakistan is vowing retaliation. This is a serious situation, one of the worst we've seen in the region in years. Let's get right to CNN's Nick Robertson, who's in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, for the very latest. Good morning, Nick.
Yeah, good morning, John, and good afternoon from here. It was just around about lunchtime today, just before lunchtime here, that Pakistan officials held a National Security Committee meeting. That's the top government officials along with the top security officials. The Prime Minister, following that, said that the Pakistan army was entitled to act in self-defense, he said, with, quote, corresponding actions. He also said that the Pakistani army should avenge the death of innocent civilians. Among the dead, government officials are saying, was a 3-year-old girl. Among the damaged properties was a seminary. The head of that seminary is the leader of a group called Jaish-e-Mohammed, who actually claimed a terror attack inside Indian-controlled Kashmir in 2019. Back then, it was a suicide bomber killing 40 Indian security forces in that attack. That appears to have been the site of one of India's targets. India has not provided Pakistani officials, as far as we've been told, with evidence of the alleged involvement in that massacre of 26 civilians. Neither have they provided information about their allegations in this attack, that they say that they were preempting a terror attack. However, the leader of that seminary, the leader of Jaish-e-Mohammed, they're called, he says that 10 of his family members, including children, were killed in the strike. But his most recent Telegram posting was a threat against India. His organization has a track record of targeting India. So a lot to unpack, but the words of the Prime Minister after that Security Committee meeting are very powerful. It is emotive that women and children are among the dead and injured. It is emotive that a mosque has been hit. It is emotive that this strike has been the deepest into Pakistan since 1971. But quite the move, the military move that Pakistan has vowed to take, that next isn't clear. But certainly this lays the way open for significant escalation, John.
Yeah, combustible ingredients here. You have two powerful militaries and decades, frankly, of grievances.
Yes, I do want to quickly move to another really, speaking of mutually destructive, a really important development that we have seen when it comes to India and Pakistan. Tensions escalating, war on the brink of war. What can you tell us about what the White House is saying about this?
Yeah, Sarah, obviously this has been something that the White House has been monitoring very closely for roughly 2 weeks now. And they had said after the attack that essentially, from what we've been hearing from senior officials, this includes the vice president himself, that they recognize that there needs to be some sort of response from India, that they supported that. But they also argued that whatever response India went with had to be proportionate and responsible. Essentially, their main goal here is, of course, they don't want this to escalate into a full-on war without, knowing when that would stop. And so yesterday we did hear the president. He was asked about this when he was in the Oval Office with his aide, Steve Witkoff. And he essentially said that it's a shame, the escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. He said, I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of the past. What we're hearing consistently from them is they are trying to figure out how the United States response behind the scenes can help try to de-escalate what is clearly growing into a much broader conflict. Their big goal here is to make sure this doesn't escalate further. We heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday as well, who is now also National Security Advisor, two big jobs on his plate while trying to deal with a situation like this. He essentially said that he echoed the president's comments and that he hopes this ends quickly and will continue to engage with both India and Pakistani leadership towards a peaceful resolution. Sarah?
Yeah, two nations capable of nuclear war. No one.
I mean, think about what's going on. This world is just crazy. Pakistan, India. Man, this is wild, man.
Welcome to The Brief. I'm Jim Sciutto in New York. We begin early today with breaking news. India launching a military operation targeting what it calls terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The sounds of explosions during those strikes. India says it struck 9 targets, adding that none of them are Pakistani military facilities. A Pakistani military spokesperson says the country will respond to those attacks, adding that at least 3 people have been killed in the Indian strikes. This comes after gunmen killed 26 people in Indian-administered Kashmir last month. India blamed Pakistan for those attacks. Nick Robertson is live now in Islamabad, and it's worth reminding our viewers that these are two nuclear-armed nations that have fired at each other before. Tell us what the situation is now and concerns about escalation now.
There's a real concern about escalation. Pakistan vowed that if India attacked, that they would respond. That was part of their military doctrine. They believe, and I've been speaking over the past few days with very senior security officials here, and they believe that this incident inside Indian-controlled Kashmir, where 26 civilians were killed, that India blamed on Pakistan, that Pakistan denied, they believe that this had now come, the relations with India had now come to a moment, a defining moment, where Pakistan needs to take a definitive stand, because India has threatened to cut off water supplies coming down three major rivers, vital, existential. Security officials describe the water from those rivers. So this is the sort of context to why that this is at a moment of extreme potential escalation. Pakistani security officials are saying that they are right now, their air force right now is in the throes of delivering what they describe as a crushing blow to India as a response for this strike. Previously, when I've spoken with Pakistani officials over the past few days, they've said that if India's retaliatory strike, which they thought was coming, they said if it just came in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, that would be something that would be more easily tolerable than striking Pakistan proper, if you will. At least two of the strikes we understand this evening, and we're getting these early details, are in Pakistan proper. This tells me, from what the officials have been speaking about, that this will demand from the Pakistani side a much higher level of response. Again, this speaks to the potential for escalation. How does India respond to this? One of those strikes in Murad K inside Pakistan proper was literally just about 20 miles from the border with India. So for their fighter jets, if that's what it was, to come over and strike, that was a relatively easy operation. However, these strikes have been on the audible, if you will, outskirts of Islamabad. Our cameraman here with me, Javid, his house is about an hour from where we are in the center of Islamabad. His house shook. There were two loud explosions, he said, and his house shook from those explosions. So that gives you an idea how close some of the strikes have been to Islamabad, perhaps about 50, 60, 70 kilometers away. The other explosions I was describing that have happened elsewhere in Pakistan have also been near the major city of Lahore, the sort of very outer reaches of that. So again, these are very strong signals, if you will, that the Indian military is sending to the Pakistani government. Again, it speaks to the potential for escalation. We have to wait and see what Pakistan's response is. What it's been, they describe it as crushing. We don't have details yet, and therefore what India may do after that. Jim?
Nick, I wonder, given that India's strikes, and this is notable to your point, struck both inside Pakistan-controlled Kashmir and inside Pakistan proper, is it reasonable to expect that crushing blow, as Pakistani officials are describing it, might do the same in kind? That is, strike inside Indian-administered Kashmir, but also perhaps inside India itself?
I think there's a genuine potential for that, and the military here have released pictures of some of the victims of the overnight attack from India, and the first assessment of the Pakistani military here is that they only have civilian casualties, and some of the images they released show women and children blooded and inside a hospital. So again, the fact that women and children have been injured beyond military-age males is going to, if you will, ratchet up the potential for response. Now, Pakistan's military is describing the casualties that they've seen so far as civilian casualties. It's unclear to me whether Pakistan would strike back at military targets or if they would strike back beyond that. If they strike back at military targets, there's a potential that escalation doesn't get out of hand. But the tensions have been hugely high. The Pakistani security officials believe this is an existential moment. The fact that the water to the country that powers a lot of the electricity generation here, that's absolutely vital. It's vital for agriculture. They feel that as an existential issue, and therefore their response was going to be accordingly strong from that perspective. It's very unclear to me where it will go from here, but the language has been very, very clear. If you track it, and I've been coming here for about, over 25 years. I first came here when Pakistan and India were fighting another one of their major skirmishes, which killed thousands of troops high in the Himalaya mountains inside of Kashmir, the Kargil battle that lasted several months. The language has become much harder and tougher in Pakistan from the military since then. This is an army, remember, that's been fighting an insurgency on their western border that has actually become increasingly ferocious as the security situation in Afghanistan has deteriorated and Islamist militants have used Afghanistan as a base and attacked into Pakistan with ferocity, that the army here over the past couple of decades has become tougher and stronger militarily in their ethos, in their outlook, and one can even say in their leadership. So there is a very strong and toughened military from the Pakistan's perspective, but also from the way their leadership evaluates the battle space and relation with neighbors. It's quite, in military terms, it's a tough leadership right now.
And Nick, drawing on your experience of previous high points in tensions, just personally, I remember being in India and Pakistan some 20 years ago in the 2000s when there was concern that there might be an escalation even to a nuclear exchange. Granted, just concern, and of course that didn't come to be. But place this current standoff in recent historical context in terms of how severe the tensions are today.
To give it try to give it a simple context here, you have a tougher and, if you will, more forward-leaning military. You have a military that, in the estimation of most Pakistani civilians, has a big influence in the running of the country. So there's that perspective. It's a tougher, more forward-leaning, more robust outlook, and national security decisions would reflect that. That this tension has been growing, as you say, it's unresolved for 75 years since the dispute over Kashmir left unresolved in 1947 after the British Empire basically divided India into two countries, Pakistan and India. Pakistan, of course, Muslim majority, India, Hindu majority. They fought three major wars in the intervening period. 71 was one of the biggest, and various skirmishes as recently as 2019 and more subsequently. But in the outlook of where the situation is, it is the fact that India has decided to shut off water from these three major rivers that feed Pakistan's agriculture, therefore economy, therefore more than 200 million population, and power generation, which is vital, particularly in the summer when it gets extremely hot. It's needed for air conditionings, running industry. So these are existential issues for Pakistan at the moment, and that's, I think, that will underpin the thinking, and has been expressed to me by very senior security officials here, that the water issue is key. And I think, just to give a little bit of additional background on the water, this is something that was being litigated in courts in recent months, and the Pakistani perception is that India had been looking for a legal way to abrogate the terms of that Indus Water Treaty signed in 1960, had been looking for a legal way to do that in recent months, and had taken this particular killing of 26 civilians as a rationale and reason to immediately jump to that position. So this is something that Pakistan has seen coming, and therefore they believe that this is not just a sudden decision by India, it's something they're pushing for.
Brewing.
Man, can we all just get along? I don't think so. There must be a left, there must be a right, there must be someone saying, you know what? I don't like what they're doing.
Is watching the standoff between Pakistan and India as fear mounts over the possibility of an all-out conflict between the neighboring nations, each with its own nuclear weapons. Oh
my God.
India launched strikes deep within Pakistan overnight, saying that they were targeting terrorists. Pakistan's prime minister described the Indian strikes as an act of war. Pakistani leaders say at least 31 people have been killed. They also claim Pakistani armed forces blew Indian jets to, quote, smithereens. India has not confirmed whether any of its planes were shot down, although French intelligence confirms at least one was shot down. Indian officials say Pakistan's military killed 12 people in the India-controlled part of Kashmir as artillery barrages continued throughout the day along the de facto border, the very same place that sparked this latest conflict. So how did we get here? Well, 2 weeks ago, 26 people, mostly tourists, were massacred in a scenic area of India-controlled Kashmir. The little-known group called Kashmir Resistance, also known as the Resistance Front, claimed responsibility for the attack on social media, but it has reportedly since walked it back. The group is an offshoot of the Islamist terrorist group Lashkar-e-Taiba, which was responsible for the infamous 2008 massacre in Mumbai. Now, Pakistan has denied that India's accusation is true, that it supported, quote, cross-border terrorism in last month's attack. But for more context, let's look at the map. Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan each control parts of Kashmir, but both claim the region in its entirety. And they fought 3 bloody wars over the Himalayan territory. The complicated history of this region dates back 80 years, when India and Pakistan gained independence from the UK in 1947. At the time, the leader of Kashmir decided to remain independent. And Kashmir is now one of the most militarized places in the entire world. China, for its part, has found itself in a diplomatic tight spot too. China also controls a portion of Kashmir, that spot on the map shaded in blue, and China is a close ally of Pakistan, providing a majority of Pakistan's weapons. All of this comes as China is also trying to shore up diplomatic ties with India amid a broader pressure from the Trump administration on trade. This afternoon, President Trump weighed in on this conflict. Take a listen.
We get along with both countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
Meanwhile, across India today, hundreds of emergency drills took on a more urgent tone. School children practiced hiding under their desks as sirens wailed. Preparation, many hope, is reserved for the worst-case scenario and will never be necessary.
Pakistan is vowing revenge after India launched a series of airstrikes, claiming it was targeting terrorist infrastructure. India says the assault was in response to last month's deadly shooting rampage inside the disputed border region of Kashmir. Dozens of mostly Indian tourists were killed in that attack. Pakistan has denied any involvement. Fears, though, are mounting that today's attack could severely escalate tensions. This afternoon, Pakistan's prime minister said India made a terrible mistake and went on to say they, quote, now have to pay the price. World leaders have been urging both sides to de-escalate. Joining me now to discuss, Leon Panetta. He's former defense secretary, of course, former CIA director as well, under President Obama. Always good to have you with us as we walk through this. What I think is on a lot of people's minds is the fact that both India and Pakistan do have nuclear capabilities. What is your level of concern that either would turn to those?
Well, it obviously is a concern because they are nuclear-powered countries, and you never know how this thing could escalate. There have always been tensions between India and Pakistan. They go back to 1947, when India was partitioned into India and Pakistan. There have been several wars that we've seen take place in the interim. I don't think either Pakistan or India wants to go into a full-fledged war. But when you're in a game of tit for tat, and there's no question now that Pakistan will probably respond to what India did, there is truly the danger of escalation here, and that should concern everybody in the world.
As we look at this, President Trump has called this escalating conflict, in his words, a shame. He said he just hopes that it ends very quickly. Just remind us what the role of the U.S. has been, right, when it comes to this sort of long-festering conflict and concerns over this region of Kashmir, and also whether you see any circumstance under which America would intervene in any way.
Well, the United States has played a role in that part of the world. When I was director of the CIA, there were tensions that were rising between Pakistan and India, and the United States took steps to try to get both countries to be able to back off, because we do think that area of the world is important. And so the United States should be providing some kind of mediation. China has also called for both countries to back off. Qatar actually could also be helpful as well. I think that those countries, and the United States in particular, have to play a role here, because both Pakistan and India would respond if the United States got involved and said, you've got to stop, you've got to be able to back off of the kind of escalation that could lead to war in that region.
Do you think there is an appetite for that? And also, is there the bandwidth, given what we see, right, in terms of the number of global issues, if you will, that this administration is dealing with, under a president, too, who has made it clear that he wants to back off some of that global involvement and truly fulfill his vision of America first?
Well, that's a very fundamental question about whether or not the role of the United States is going to continue to be a world leader, or whether we're basically going to withdraw. The problem is in withdrawing, these dangers to our security are not going to disappear. And we are living at a dangerous time. We've got a war in Gaza. We've got a war in Ukraine. We've got conflicts both with Russia and China. We've got to worry about North Korea. We've got to worry about Iran. So there are a lot of areas of conflict in the world. I don't think the United States can run and hide from those conflicts. We have got to exercise some leadership, frankly, working with our allies to try to make sure that we can try to preserve the peace that the whole world needs as a result of these kinds of tensions. So my hope is that the United States will not back away. This is not a pretty please situation. This is a situation where you got to roll up your sleeves and actually engage with both India and Pakistan if you're going to be able to control these rising tensions.
It is just wild that during Trump's second term, everything is going on. Okay. He's trying to end the war in Russia, in Ukraine, now Pakistan and India. He's already talking to Iran for not having nuclear weapons. You have Israel and the Palestinian people. Like, you have all of these things going on. And it's like, whoa, none of these happened during his first term. Now, all of this war, definitely India and Pakistan just started, but the rest of the wars started under Biden. Now, I'm not blaming Biden for those wars. However, it's like, there's so much to do for the Trump administration. I don't know how they're going to do all of these, but they got to do something, man.
Says he had a great meeting at the White House today with Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney. And the Prime Minister, well, he said afterwards, quote, "I feel better about relations in many respects." So publicly, at least, both sides seemed pleased with the meeting. Whether it was a typical meeting, though, or would be for any president not named Donald Trump, that's another question. Because here's what else Mr. Trump said just a few hours afterwards.
As far as calling him Governor Carney, no, I haven't done that yet, and maybe I won't.
That's the President of the United States suggesting that maybe he won't, but maybe he will call the newly elected leader of our closest neighbor governor, as though Canada were the 51st state. Not typical, except these days it kind of is. Nor is it typical for a visiting Canadian Prime Minister to have to say twice to the President's face that his country is not for sale, after his host, when asked about it, starts almost daydreaming out loud.
Mr. President, and Mr. Prime Minister, I'd like to get a good response to this too. Mr. President, you have said if Canada should become the 51st state. Were you joking?
No. Well, I still believe that, but you know, it takes two to tango, right? But I think it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever.
A few minutes later, this time after a question on tariffs, Prime Minister Carney came back to the 51st state issue.
Mr. President, is there anything the Prime Minister can say to you today to change your mind on tariffing Canada?
Tariffing cars?
Tariffing Canada. Is there anything he could say to you in the course of your meetings with him today that could get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
Just the way it is, ladies and gentlemen.
On the 51st state, if Canadians don't want it, would you respect that?
Sure, I would. But this is not necessarily a one-day deal. This is over a period of time they have to make that decision. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may. If respectfully, Canadians' view on this is not going to change on the 51st state.
The president also talked tariffs and showed impatience at being asked about whether he's reached any trade agreements with any country so far.
Just to finish, we also have a situation, because everyone says, when are you going to sign deals? We don't have to sign deals. We could sign 25 deals right now, Howard, if we wanted. We don't have to sign deals. They have to sign deals with us.
Well, keep it honest, the president is now just 3 days shy of a month into his 3-month tariff pause, time which he said would be used to strike trade agreements with the rest of the world, especially China, which he exempted from the pause and raised tariffs on to 145%. So far, however, the administration has announced 0 agreements with 0 countries, and by the sound of the president's answer, there might not be any, which, by the way, is not surprising. In normal times, in past administrations, trade deals have taken many, many months, even years to hammer out. The idea that even a framework for trade agreements would happen this fast was unlikely, but this president did put a timer on it. And when asked more specifically about China, the administration's responses have been all over the place.
Mr. President, you said that you have spoken to President Xi. When did that happen? China says it hasn't happened.
I spoke to him numerous times.
So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom.
Setting the stage for a deal with China, what does that mean? Has the president spoken directly with Xi yet?
I don't have anything to read out on a direct talk between the president and President Xi.
Have you had any conversations with your Chinese counterpart? Has there been anything between you and the Chinese?
I think we've had soft, the way I would say it is soft entrees, through intermediaries and those kind of comments.
Well, as for the president, he was asked about China during a lengthy interview about 2 weeks ago with Time magazine. The question was, will you call President Xi if he doesn't call you? President Trump said no. No, you won't. Nope. Question, has he called you yet? The president, yep. When did he call you? The president, he's called, and I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf. Now, the Chinese have consistently denied that any such call happened, and today, testifying before Congress under oath, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the two countries have not even started talking trade.
Oh, my God.
There are 18 very important trading relationships. We are currently negotiating with 17 of those trading partners. China, we have not engaged in negotiations with as of yet.
Well, joining me now, CNN political analyst and New York Times senior White House correspondent Maggie Haberman. What stood out to you about the meeting with Carney?
Many things. The main one is that all of these foreign leaders go into the Oval Office with President Trump in something of a no-win situation, because The president sets the terms of what he wants it to be. He did a truth post before this meeting started. He has obviously been talking about the 51st state. He has been talking about trade. And so Carney, who has been pretty tough and who was elected in part as backlash to Donald Trump in Canada, had a choice to make on how he was going to handle it. He came in clearly with a prepared line, which was Canada's not for sale. But then he had to sort of navigate not having a Zelensky type moment with Trump where they're in a standoff.
Zelensky type
he
moment.
Seemed to have, but again, it was all on President Trump's
Well, it was so interesting. I mean, the only thing to compare it to is kind of the Zelensky. They're on one end of the spectrum.
They're very far end.
Right, and then there's the British Prime Minister presenting a golden letter from the Buckingham Palace with like double plus good invitations.
Right, and not being in total disagreement with him, but occasionally, or not being in total agreement with him, occasionally voicing some disagreement when they were at their separate podiums. This is somewhere on that spectrum. It is far closer to Keir Starmer, the British PM, than Zelensky.
The Prime Minister also seemed to have, I don't know if the thing about the real estate deal was a planned out, but it seemed
Sure
like
looked like
it
it,
sure
yeah.
sounded like it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see the president kind of responding.
Well, it's interesting, Anderson, because all of these foreign leaders do workshop. I mean, it's not uncommon that you would workshop how you're going to handle meeting with a U.S. president, but the extent to which they all have to do some form of prep because they know they're going to end up in a bind with President Trump. He clearly had practiced saying something that would both disarm Trump and also make his point. And he did that. Trump did respond. He laughed, but then he went right back to his point.
I want to play something else that the president said in a bilateral meeting.
We don't really want cars from Canada.
Okay, here we go.
And we put tariffs on cars from Canada, and at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars. We really don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum and various other things because we want to be able to do it ourselves.
Is it clear to you what kind of outcome he's looking for?
No, and I'm not sure that it's clear to him what kind of actual specific outcome he's looking for other than one where the U.S. can say we're on top and somebody else is not. Whatever the outcome is with Canada, with most of these other trading partners, it will look like some kind of a framework of a deal, and Trump will say, we won. This is what I wanted. It won't be an actual trade deal to the point you made earlier. Those take months and sometimes years to hammer out. He will take some kind of off-ramps, but I don't think that he knows exactly what he wants to see other than a headline that says success.
I also wonder how much the president's knowledge that the prime minister was elected in reaction to a lot of what the president said. I mean, his popularity grew in reaction to President Trump.
True. Most people would have the reaction of, oh, that means that perhaps I should temper what I'm saying. Trump, as you know, historically doubles down. We have seen that here. And also he sees it as it's still everyone talking about him one way or the other. So he sort of likes being at the center of it.
Do you think his relationship is, I guess it's not for, I mean, nobody really knows what his relationship with is going to be vis-a-vis or in relation to how he was with Trudeau.
No, I mean, look, he dangled that idea that he might call Carney governor, right? So that's suggesting that I'm still going to possibly minimize you if I want to. But so far, he does seem, to your question about the fact that Carney got elected in response to Trump and as a backlash to Trump, he is clearly aware that there is at least some limit on how far he can go right.
He also announced or kind of mentioned that he would stop strikes on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And an Israeli official has told CNN that the U.S. did not inform Israel in advance about the de facto truce between them. And Israel has just struck, the Houthis just struck Israel.
Yes, and Trump made no mention of Israel and that attack on Israel that just took place. Look, I think this is an outgrowth, as I understand it, of some of what Steve Witkoff, who was just sworn in as the envoy, the special envoy to the Mideast, has been working on in Oman. It was Oman officials who announced this. We'll see what it looks like. I mean, there was some report that the U.S. military strikes were still ongoing after Trump said that. So, you know, this will either open up a change or it won't. But
I mean, it's too many things going on, man. Too many things going on. Godly. Hopefully, Trump gets this all together because, I mean, dear Lord, save us. Save this world. Dear Jesus.
Republican Senator Tom Tillis says he's told the White House he will vote against Ed Martin, President Trump's pick to be the U.S. attorney here in Washington.
Here we go again.
If Mr. Martin were being put forth as a U.S. attorney for any district except the district where January 6th happened, the protest happened, I'd probably support him, but not in this district. But at this point, I've indicated to the White House I wouldn't support his nomination.
And with that, the floodgates have opened. A lot of pressure coming from the MAGA mediaverse to change his mind on Martin, a devoted Trump supporter who made his name as an organizer of Stop the Steal and a lawyer and outspoken advocate for January 6 defendants.
I'm sorry, Senator Tillis, you want to give illegal aliens more nuance and understanding and compassion in how you handle their cases than you'll give American patriots who dared to stand up to a contested election? And that's the reason that you can't vote for Ed Martin? Where were you when January 6ers, when your constituents were getting thrown in prison? Tom Tillis, you are very much on the wrong side of history.
Nia, just to recap here, they're mad because the senator says that the idea that Ed Martin is in support of the many things having to do with the January 6 rioters, including pardoning them and defending them. And that was the sort of the bridge too far for Senator Tillis. That's what MAGA media is upset about.
I mean, it really goes to the centrality of January 6th or trutherism, this idea that it was just a peaceful protest and a rightful protest that these folks wanted to essentially overthrow a free and fair election. So that's the kind of rhetoric you hear in MAGAverse, and that is what is going to come very strongly at Tom Tillis. I mean, he has stated that he's not going to support this person, and it also gets at the kind of fear, I think, that a lot of senators and folks in the House have in standing up to MAGA, because you will get a lot thrown at you. And listen, MAGA has proven to be violent, right, and scary if you look at what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, and on that note, just to sort of put a cap on Ed Martin and his role vis-a-vis January 6th, because he's an acting U.S. attorney now in D.C. He's already dismissed the January 6 Capitol riot cases, which is one of the things that Senator Tillis is upset about. He was a defense counsel and prosecutor on the January 6 case, fired the prosecutors involved in January 6 investigations. And then what you're seeing on the screen there are some of the other issues. That was just January 6. These are other issues that senators are raising their eyebrows about. Everything from the fact that he failed to report in his confirmation process nearly 200 appearances on far-right media outlets. He claims not to recall numerous past controversial statements under oath. This is another big one. The U.S. Attorney nominee, Ed Martin, he has now repudiated an alleged Nazi sympathizer, which is at odds with his own statements that our own K-File have found.
Yes, he has a big file. The other thing about Ed Martin, which is both a virtue and a vice, depending on where people are coming from, is that he is very aligned with President Trump, has gone on Twitter to sort of take cues from the president and others, suggesting prosecutions. So that sort of separation, which I realize is a little novel, or like, behind the times at this point, but the separation between the Justice Department and the White House when it comes to prosecutorial decisions and investigations, that is utterly blurred, and especially blurred when it comes to him and his public statements about seeing himself as the president's lawyer.
There's a sense on the Hill that Tillis has kind of taken one for the team on this one, that there are many Senate Republicans who don't think that Ed Martin would be a remotely appropriate person to serve in a confirmed position.
But the question is whether or not he is taking one for the team, or whether he's going to provide political cover for other Republicans so that the president will have to either he won't get confirmed or the president will withdraw the nomination.
Exactly.
So we don't know yet.
Yes, that is sort of that's what everyone up there I think is feeling. But remember, this is politics, and so Tillis has, if he wants to be a senator again, he has to stand for re-election. He's got a difficult or fairly difficult contest next year. And so the question is, if he wants to run again, is the president and his team going to turn all of his political forces against him in a primary? I mean, Trump does have other options, by the way. He could just nominate someone else. That could happen.
But Ed Martin is a favorite.
Yeah.
And then just on the idea that Tom Tillis is up for re-election, this is really one of the things that makes it so fascinating, because on the other nominees that have been controversial, Tillis was a yes. This is the one that which was an early indicator that Tillis was going to actually run for re-election because we weren't really sure. This is one where he's pushing back, and it's a biggie when it comes to Tillis's own political viability, because it's going to be hard to see him not getting a Republican primary. He has some people running against him, but one that has the full support of MAGA world.
It's going to be hard to see that MAGA world doesn't come in with an incredible amount of money and try to crush him as they go through the primary, as they have said they are going to do. What is worth noting are two things. One, I don't think it matters who is going to be the U.S. attorney. I just don't. I think that Donald Trump is going to put anybody, whoever he wants in there. Tamara said it, like there's no line between the Justice Department and the White House anymore. You could put me in there, for God's sakes, or you, or you, or you, or you, and we could all...
Okay, thank you. There we go, Joe Biden.
Let's turn to Ukraine, can we? Because you compared the war in Ukraine with the Second World War. President Trump is now saying, look, if you want peace, Ukraine is going to have to give up some territory. Some people think that is common sense to say that. Do you think it's not common sense? It's perhaps modern day appeasement?
It is modern day appeasement. Look, listen to what Putin said when he talked about going from Kyiv into Ukraine. And why? He can't stand the fact that the Russian dictatorship that he runs, that the Soviet Union has collapsed. And anybody thinks he's going to stop is just foolish.
New this morning, former President Joe Biden giving his first broadcast interview since leaving the White House. Listen to what he told the BBC.
And the way we talk about now that, well, it's just the Gulf of America. Maybe we're going to have to take back Panama. Maybe we need to acquire Greenland. Maybe Canada should be. What the hell's going on here?
Is that what the hell is
What
going on?
president ever talks like that?
Okay. All right, with us now, CNN political commentator, former Trump White House communications director, Alyssa Farah-Griffin, and CNN political commentator and host of Off the Cup, S.E. Cupp, is here.
Hi.
Two things I want to talk about with former President Biden there, because he was talking about foreign policy in general and President Trump's handling of it. Politico's headline today is World on Fire. Look, India, Pakistan.
Yeah.
You have Russia still, pounding Ukraine. You've got Israel taking the gloves off again, perhaps in Gaza there. So when Joe Biden, the former president, is talking about this, what do you think of his message? And then also, what do you think of the messenger?
The message is fine. The messenger is irrelevant. And that's, hard to say and maybe hard for him to hear. But listen, Democratic voters are over him. Democratic lawmakers are angry at him. And Democratic donors are over him. They're past him. They're done with him. They don't want him around. And just practically, it's a very bad time for Joe Biden to pop up. Voters are just now starting to blame the economy on Donald Trump and less on Joe Biden. For him to pop up and remind people of the bad old days it's bad timing. He's got a great point of view on foreign policy and he's earned it over many years, but he's an irrelevant figure in the party right now.
He's going to pop up tomorrow on The View, I think, with you, Alyssa, former President Biden is. Again, on foreign policy, this is something that President Biden ran on before he dropped out, which we'll get to in just a second here. How do voters feel about this message, that this is all chaos?
Well, I suspect Essie and I are getting similar texts this morning from Democratic operatives, because this is the messenger no Democrat wants to see out there right now. Listen, Joe Biden has a very mixed legacy on a number of factors. He deserves tremendous credit for holding the NATO alliance.
Even the Democrats, the liberals, they don't want to see Joe Biden. What has Joe Biden done that is so bad? Oh, I forgot. Sleepy Joe. I forgot.
Together in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is also a president who oversaw the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that arguably has implications for the war between Israel and Gaza and other things that we see happening around the world, something that I think has been really hard for allies and our adversaries around the world to forget about.
Exactly.
Listen, people are ready to move on, with due respect to the former president. And most former presidents give their legacies some time to breathe. I think of Jimmy Carter. When he lost, he did not go out there and do a lot of interviews. He gave his legacy some time. And a decade later, he was one of the most beloved former presidents. If I were giving advice to Joe Biden, it'd be give your legacy some time to breathe. Trump is actually getting some responsibility for what's happening right now. Let him own that.
And I'm sure you say that, though, excited about the booking on The View you have tomorrow, getting a chance to talk to the
But
former...
thank you for coming on.
Yeah, just one more quick bite of former President Biden, then I want to move on to something else here. But he was asked a question that I think I know Democrats don't want to relive right now, which is should he dropped out of the race sooner?
Mr. President, did you leave it too late? Should you have withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered.
Okay, Sleepy.
I'm sorry, I should have had that face there. I mean, Alyssa, it may be the way he answered that question that answered the question.
Even the Democrats, they cannot stand Joe Biden. And this were the folks that were saying, you know what? This man is ready. He's ready to run again. Now they're saying, Joe Biden should not be coming out by this time. He needs to go back inside. Oh, now they want to send Joe Biden back to the basement? I don't know.
Too late?
Joe ain't going back to no basement.
Withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered.
I'm sorry, I should have had that face there. I mean, Alyssa, it may be the way he answered that question that answered the question.
It did. Listen, Kamala Harris had a 90-day stretch to run, by the way, at a time when the approval rating in the country, the right track, wrong track, only 28% of Americans thought that the country was on the right track. You could be the greatest political candidate of all time, which the former vice president was not, and you're not going to be able to overcome that way that you're just carried down by the Biden administration. It's also just not a feat we've ever seen in American politics where somebody's been elected in that short of a time frame. And to her credit, she raised $1 billion. She set some major, she outpaced some goals that she had. But I think it's inarguable that more time for any other candidate on the Democratic side would have been a good thing.
Former President Biden did an interview, I think it was with the BBC, where he was asked about some of Trump's foreign policy moves in the opening day of his second term. And he brought up this idea of like, what are they focusing on, mentioning the Gulf of America conversation.
And the way we talk about now that, well, it's just the Gulf of America. Maybe we're going to have to take back Panama. Maybe we need to acquire Greenland. Maybe Canada should be. What the hell's going on here? What president ever talks like that? That's not who we are. We're about freedom, democracy, opportunity, not about confiscation.
To your point, Afghanistan was very much a difficult issue for Joe Biden, his handling there. But he's raising something, which is, what are we doing here? What are we focusing on? Who are we? I feel like, Shirley, you come from that era of the freedom, democracy, opportunity conversation with Republicans. Give the last word to you.
Well, again, whoever thought we'd be talking about annexing Canada? I didn't hear that during the campaign. I thought the issue was going to be the economy. And so I think, Biden's onto something here, going after Greenland, Canada, Panama. We're back to spheres of influence. That's what it feels like. I think we're all very uncomfortable with this. And frankly, I think many Republican members of Congress are very uncomfortable with this whole conversation about the annexation of Canada.
Yeah, again, it's a what are we doing?
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Everybody, thank you. Double tap your screen, subscribe to the channel. Everybody, tell me in the chat, how would you rate Trump's first 100 days? And Joe Biden coming out to do an interview, I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know. Should have stayed in the basement. All right, interest rate.
Known for thinking and thinking again about every word he says before he says it, is not mincing words today.
If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment.
So that was the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, this afternoon. He made those comments after choosing not to adjust interest rates for right now, and instead issuing warnings of coming higher prices, higher unemployment, higher inflation because of all the uncertainty around the president's tariff policy. That's all unfolding as the stakes in the global trade war now getting higher.
I will be going to Switzerland, and the negotiations will begin on Saturday.
Are those negotiations considered advanced?
As I said, on Saturday we will begin, which I believe is the opposite of advance.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent today confirming trade discussions with China, but also leveling expectations there, saying that these are basically talks to talk about talking, even suggesting that it's a coincidence, emphasizing he was already going to be in Switzerland this weekend to talk to the Swiss, and the Chinese just happened to be there too. But what the two sides could discuss is a way to potentially de-escalate these massive tariffs that President Trump has leveled on Chinese goods coming into the U.S.
They said that they would not talk unless the reciprocal trade tariff of 145% was removed.
I'm not going to give away our strategy. Look, everything's on the table.
As it is in most high-level negotiations, everything is on the table. That's a pretty boilerplate standard answer. But then the president was asked about this exact scenario this afternoon in the Oval Office.
Right.
Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
Seems like everything isn't exactly on the table. All right, our panel is here, but we're going to start with CNN chief domestic correspondent and anchor Phil Mattingly. Phil, always wonderful to see you. Let's start with what Powell said. He said it is, quote, possible to imagine, that's his phrase, and as we know, he chooses his words carefully, that the economy will get worse because of this tariff policy. What did you hear in his words today?
Honestly, I think the best shorthand version of Chair Powell's remarks, and also the Fed statement that came out at 2 p.m., is no one really knows anything right now. And I'm not trying to be glib when I say that. I think it's actually really important to understand the moment where uncertainty is kind of the buzzword we've heard for now several months from CEOs, from small business owners, from market participants, from a lot of government officials, including some White House officials when they're being more candid and perhaps not on the record. That now includes the Federal Reserve chair. The number of times and different ways that Powell got at the point of not actually having any idea what's going to happen next, and the very clear risks that that poses, both on the inflation side of things, but also on the economic growth and employment side of things, but also the possibility that maybe it won't be so bad, is, frankly, it's remarkable. And I think the fact that the top economic policy, monetary policy official in the United States, the most important monetary policy official in the world, is basically saying, we have no idea what's going to happen next, and therefore we are going to just hold, is a really good capture of the moment that we're in. And that moment, and I think you can just watch kind of if you're following the Dow Jones Industrials Average, it's underscored by the fact that over the course of the last several weeks, I think 5, maybe 6 times, depending on where today landed, I was preparing to talk to you, so I don't know exactly what close was, but there have been intraday jumps or drops of 1% or more that have completely inverted. 5 times in the last several weeks. There's no real precedent for that. And that's because the market right now is operating with a similar amount of uncertainty and completely reliant and kind of on a hair trigger for any type of headline that could dictate positive news or negative news. And that brings me to what we heard from the president today and what his trade negotiators are going to be doing this weekend. The president making very clear he's not in the mood or planning to pull back any of those China tariffs. The fact that talks are happening at all, a positive signal that Powell kind of alluded to today, saying, look, anything could happen. All of this could kind of fall off the plate in terms of risks if there are a bunch of deals made. The reality, though, there are no deals that have been made up to this point. The negotiations that are underway are complicated because they're not traditional trade talks as you and I, Casey, covered them when they were being moved through Capitol Hill.
Yeah, when they did them the normal way.
Right. And those, to be fair, those took 18 months at a minimum on average. And so in 90 days for 100 trade deals doesn't really give that kind of leeway. But I think the biggest reality in this moment is the downside risk here is enormous and potentially stagflation-esque. The upside risk is, well, we'll see what happens in Geneva, where people just happen to be going. Casey.
What, just remarkable. Same place, same time. Who knew? Phil Mattingly, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. Our panel's here: CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams, CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel, CNN political commentator Sochi Hinojosa, and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Jamie Gangel, the president was extraordinarily definitive in the Oval Office. You heard him there. He just answered the question with one word: no. I'm not, willing to adjust this. I don't want to change this. Though, I will say, it's noteworthy that on the day that Jerome Powell came out and did something that the president would have preferred he not do, he wanted Powell to come out and cut rates. Trump also isn't out there trashing Jerome Powell.
Wait, yet.
Oh. Although maybe I should have opened Truth Social before I said that out loud on the air.
3, 2, 1. Look, I think that could very well be coming, but just to underscore what Phil Mattingly said, I don't know how many times we're going to use the word uncertainty, but here we are again. Jay Powell, at least today, has the hardest job in Washington, and this is an impossible hand he has been dealt, because uncertainty is not a way to run an economy. And to tell a Fed chairman we don't know just makes his job impossible. As Phil said, he just has to wait and see. I believe the names that President Trump has called Chairman a major loser and Mr. Too Late, and threatened to fire him, and then went back. Let's wait and see.
Scott Jennings, this reality that Powell acknowledged, where the signals that are coming in are scrambled and totally unclear. What do you make of it, and what is the level of concern among Republicans on the Hill who, as we've discussed, have not really been, fans of tariffs in recent, generations?
Well, I think the chairman should keep his pants on, because the Secretary of the Treasury is currently engaged, and the administration is currently engaged in high-level negotiations with 16 of the 17 most important countries. The 17th is China, and he's going to Switzerland to open talks with the Chinese this weekend. Obviously, the market isn't terribly worried about it. Over the last month, both the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average are up significantly. So there's some confidence here, I think, in what Bessent is doing. I don't think all these trade deals are going to come quickly, but they are going to come. If anything is true about Donald Trump, it's that he was put on this earth to want to make deals, and he has created a situation where he now has to make deals, and he should and can
How
make
much
deals.
pressure are his people feeling to do that?
Oh, I think there's a lot of pressure and interest to do it, but it's positive pressure, because we're finally resetting and leveling the playing field. You mentioned the Hill. Of course, Republicans are interested in the outcome here. They're the ones that have to run under this plan next year. But of course, they're also under their own pressure, which is to get their act together and pass the reconciliation bill. That's part 2 of a 2-part plan. Rebalancing trade is part 1. Cutting taxes and deregulating energy is part 2. They both have to go together, and so they're under their own set of pressure up on the Hill.
I think that with the uncertainty, I think we can all agree that it is Donald Trump who caused the uncertainty, and now he needs to bring us out of it, and yet he continues to blame everybody else. Whether he blames the Biden economy, you said 3, 2, 1 before he goes after the Fed and blames them, for pressure and, for not providing for the American people. So I do think that Trump at some point needs to put pressure on his administration to deliver something fairly soon. I don't think that the American people have time to wait anymore. I think that we're seeing that, we're essentially trade is at a halt with China. And so I think that it is fairly soon, as people have been warning, that shelves are empty. And so I think Trump needs to go back to his administration and say, if we don't have something within 30 days, if we don't, what is our plan B? And I don't think that that's happened from him yet.
Elliot Williams, we heard, of course, Phil use the word stagflation, which is sort of the great fear. Ford Motor Company announced that starting May 2nd, so 5 days ago, they were going to raise their sticker prices on cars between $600 and $2,000. This is no longer just hypothetical for people, although, as Sochi points out, we haven't really yet felt the impact on shelves of what's going on with these ships. But I mean, how much patience do you think there actually is?
Not a lot. And I don't think Ford did that action out of necessity because they had to. It's because of the uncertainty that we're all talking about here. If all the things that Scott laid out happen, then absolutely the skies will open and everything will be great. The problem that I think the president has created is with the Truth Social posts and with these statements that aren't quite supported, causing a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the markets. Look, just think about last week, all this talk about movies and putting tariffs on films, something that would be horribly...
I think that was Monday. I think that was this Just, how long a week is it, Donald Trump's watching?
But even think about, I saw the new Marvel film Thunderbolts with my kids this weekend that was shot in New York, Atlanta, and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. How do you put tariffs on something that is shot in multiple places around the world but distributed by an American company? When the president puts things like that out as statements and then walks away and says, well, we're just going to see what happens, it has an effect on industries that just simply do not know how to plan.
All right. What do you guys think about Trump tariffing Hollywood? What do you guys think about a tariff on Hollywood? I mean, I don't know, because Hollywood is a worldwide thing. Sometimes they shoot in different countries, different cities. But the OG said, we going to tariff everybody, anybody. Anybody tries something, you going to get tariffed. Trump ain't joking.
Cops are hunting down what they say is the minor league gang for Tren de Aragua, who call themselves Los Diablos de 42. It's made up of kids from Venezuela who are here illegally. They're accused of attacking NYPD officers in Times Square, hurling glass bottles, basketballs, even a scooter. So far, 5 have been arrested. 3 more are on the lam. One of the pint-sized punks that got arrested is just 12. Apparently, he's the leader of a theft ring in Central Park. Border Czar Tom Homan shipping up to New York to address the situation.
These people are in the country illegally. This is just another example of sanctuary cities not cooperating with ICE. And look what happened. NYPD officers are attacked. If you're brave enough to attack an armed law enforcement officer, you're much more dangerous to an unarmed civilian. We're coming for him.
And as Tom Homan hunts down the teen migrant gang, Trump's racking up accolades for being the law and order president.
It speaks to one of Trump's best issues, right? The idea Alcatraz, you think law and order, you think Donald Trump. So Donald Trump ran in part on law and order. It was one of the reasons that he got elected. And at this particular point, Americans like what they're hearing from him on the issue of crime. And you see this right here with a +2 net approval rating, far better than Joe Biden left office with back in 2024.
I mean, this gang leader, Dana, is 12. What were you doing when you were 12?
Oh, summer fun day camp, making those little bracelets in camp and things like that.
You weren't throwing a scooter?
And I was probably playing school. I got to play school. I'm sure everybody here, especially the judge, will have a lot of thoughts about this. But one of the things I wanted to say is that it's very frustrating as a taxpayer to be trapped by liberal governance where your taxpayer dollars are going to actually fund things that are against your interests. So, for example, the idea that as a sanctuary city, you're not going to cooperate with Tom Homan and ICE. For what? Who are you protecting? What are we paying for? I'm getting very frustrated about that. And the other issue is, as I understand it, for a lot of these people, they're in the migrant shelters, and the shelters being run by the gangs. And then you have the situation where the gang members then spread out and they use younger and younger people because they know that those people are not going to be punished. And the juvenile system can't take them. And so what do? What does the system have to do? We basically pay to send them back home where they end up in the same situation.
How dangerous is a 12-year-old gang member, Judge Janine?
I've indicted a 12-year-old for murder. Because I think they're dangerous. But that's clearly an exception. But
oh man, 12 years old. I mean, we gotta do better, man. We gotta do better with the kids, with the teenagers. Why would you have a 12-year-old that's even thinking of shooting somebody, of doing something bad? You should be in school reading your book or some shit. Like, why would you? Oh my goodness. It's sad, man. It's sad. Parents needs to be more hands-on, more responsible, especially the fathers. I always say this, like, dads, y'all need to take charge, man, because there's no way kids should be doing trash like this.
What you've got are these kids are being groomed to be gang members. Remember, this is a foreign terrorist organization. These kids have been arrested dozens of times. This 12-year-old, I mean, this is socially acceptable to them. They throw up the gang signs. They take pictures of themselves. And Tom Homan's right. If you are willing to assault a police officer, you're a dangerous individual. And let me tell you how the Democrats helped make this worse. When I was a DA, there was a move afoot to raise the age of criminal responsibility to 18, which was absurd because at that point it was 16. They raised it to 18. What do you think this 12-year-old is going to face? He's not going into criminal court because it's not a serious enough arrest, okay? It's only if it's a murder, a rape, a kidnapping that you even can consider them for an adult court. But this kid can't go into criminal court, even though there are dozens of arrests, and this is a robbery. But in addition to that, what you've got is a family court that doesn't even handle him if he's 11 years old. If he's 12, maybe if they want to do person in need of supervision, but no one's going to take any responsibility for him and his family. So they're taking over Times Square. They're proud of it. The legal system is cutting them loose. And we've got a police department that is being prevented from protecting, as Dana was saying, Americans.
And this is why I moved out of New York. I used to live in New York. I'm like, nah, there's no way you can raise a family in New York. I mean, if you're rich, okay, great. But if you're not all that, there's no way you can raise a family in New York. No gated community. School is definitely high violence. This is definitely Times Square right here. In Times Square, New York. Yeah, there's no way.
Citizens. I'll tell you the way to resolve this. If I'm ICE, I notify NYPD. I tell them, because that's what I did when I was DA. I would tell a jurisdiction I'm coming in. You want to join us? Great. You don't? We're coming in. All right? And you go in and you make the arrest. Show up at the Roosevelt Hotel. I don't want my taxpayer dollars taking care of people who assault women, throw them up against the wall and rob them, and then we pay for their dinner and their lodging. Are you kidding? And in the end, this is a preventable crime. The Democrats with cashless bail, raise the age, sanctuary cities are putting Americans in danger.
How soon, Greg, is the media going to call this person a Manhattan teen?
I am. I think that, Judge, you are way out of line. You're being too harsh on these teens. Clearly, they're disadvantaged. The food selection at their hotel is lacking in gluten-free ethnic choices, right? The Wi-Fi is slow. So many things are in English. And that's oppressive and imperialistic. I demand that Senator Van Hollen come to Times Square right now and meet with these young scamps. Share a cherry Coke. Discuss due process. You know what drives me crazy is when you always hear this canard. Is that the word?
I think so.
I'll use it. Illegals commit fewer crimes than actual citizens. And you go, well, and then they'll go, well, they also don't report crimes because if you expose that, that'll expose them to deportation. You can't have both. It's a lie. It's a lie. The data always lumps illegal immigrants with legal immigrants. Legal immigrants actually commit fewer crimes. Illegal immigrants, oh, they commit a lot of crimes. They're like 45% more likely to be in a gang. They're 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime, usually more serious and more violent crimes. They make up a disproportionate share of prisons in Arizona. I wonder why. So on top of that, the FBI does miss a lot of the incidents of violence and property crime because they aren't reported, because a lot of the illegal crime is on other illegals in that neighborhood. That's right. The FBI estimates maybe it's 40% of violent crime and 30% of property crime. So the next episode says, oh, but you know, they're law-abiding. That's not law-abiding. We see it with our eyes. We know what crime
We
is.
just saw a video of these cops in Tennessee pull over this guy who was human smuggling, and they just let him off.
Yeah.
If they're not, reported, they're just getting let off. Do you have any statistics to refute what Greg just said, Leslie?
Well, one of my statistics, he was already yelling at the drop in property and violent crime since the 90s, but let's not go there. let's go with, I'm not going to defend violence of any kind because I'm a liberal and we liberals are pacifists for the most part. And in addition to that, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to crime. I sometimes get grief from those in my party when it comes to that. These are the type of people that Democrats and Republicans agree should be deported. But it's how they're deported and it's how they're being kept track of. For example, we have a video here we see with our own eyes. There's no question. But there is a database, and there are people in the database that may not be illegal. There are people in the database that are in there because of tattoos or because on Instagram, I don't know if you've seen, I have 2 kids in high school right now, and gang symbols in their pictures, they think they're like really cool and they're really entitled kids going to private school. But this is the problem. When I looked into it, I'm like, so what is the real problem? What is the ACLU, angry about? And this is it. If we don't have an accurate database of individuals, this is very different because we're seeing it with our own eyes. We see with the video, absolutely no question. And then we go into due process, and then we go into what the judges have said. And now people like to say the liberal judges. There have been 2 judges, one in New York who was appointed by Bill Clinton, but the judge in Colorado that was appointed by Donald Trump, Judge Rodriguez, both agree that the way to deport these people is through the Immigration and Nationality Act in order to remove them, which is already on the books. It is a means that we can legally remove these individuals. And individuals like this are what, myself included, we want the violent criminals gone, not the abuelas.
Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization.
Yep.
All right. I've heard about that private school gang, Leslie. The WASPs. They'll scuff up your docksiders. I was a victim. Victimized repeatedly. Ahead, President Trump smacks the hair gel out of Greasy for letting Hollywood slip into foreign hands.
Joining me now is Tom Homan, White House border czar. Tom, it's great to see you. I've got to ask you about the breaking news that we played at the top of the show, replayed in the angle, the video of this this illegal alien gang and all teens attacking police in Times Square. They're not even trying to hide it. We were told they're part of this group called Los Diablos 42, kind of an offshoot of TDA. What can you tell us?
Well, yeah, I mean, these people are in the country illegally, and the first thing the police commissioner did up there, she's ordered an internal affairs investigation on it. Did someone call ICE? Because we happen to be at the precinct where some of these people are being processed by happenstance, but all of a sudden now there's an internal affairs investigation. Who called ICE? These people are illegal in the country. We just proved to the commissioner, we proved to the city council that wants to lock us out of Rikers Island, that working with Mayor Adams, we just got done 2 weeks ago, indicted 27 members of TDA through a RICO investigation. 21 are currently in custody. We're looking for 6. These are people who are murder for hire, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, gun trafficking. We took 27 TDA off the street. ICE, with the cooperation of NYPD, we showed what our partnership can do, and they're already pulling back now because the commissioner is more concerned about who called ICE than working with ICE to get these people not off the street, out of the country. And like I say, the city council, the same day we're up there bragging about 27 TDA taking off the street, making New York safer, they sue Mayor Adams to keep us out of Rikers Island. So I'll be going to New York tomorrow. This is just another example of sanctuary cities not cooperating with ICE, and look what happened. NYPD officers are attacked. If you're brazen enough to attack an armed law enforcement officer, you're much more dangerous to an unarmed civilian.
No, they'll have a knife at your throat in 2 seconds. What's your message to those 3 illegals? I hate the word migrant, by the way. I don't even want to use it. They're illegal aliens, okay? That's what they are. But the 3 of them who are still on the loose, your message to them tonight?
My thing is, how can you be an illegal alien and you're committing crimes? You're supposed to be hiding, trying to make some money, send back home and do some, what are you doing committing crimes? You are already here illegally. The only thing you should be focused on is hiding. Okay? There's no way you should be committing crimes when you are already illegal. Yeah, send their ass back home.
We're coming for them. And these are the type, I want to explain something. These are the type of people that AOC brags while I'm educating people to their constitutional rights. We all know what she's doing. She's educating illegal alien criminals how to invade law enforcement. But now I'm going to do a little education myself. You don't want to open the door. You don't want to answer a question. You don't want to help us with the travel documents and get you removed. That's a violation of Title 8, United States Code 1253. It is a crime, and we're going to start prosecuting those crimes tomorrow. So if you got a final order and you want to hinder your removal, you want to put roadblocks up and not cooperate, you want to hide, you want to not open the door, then the agency's going to start prosecuting you criminally. Then after you get out of jail from that prosecution, then we'll deport you. Game's over. We're going to look for these public safety threats, and we're going to take them off the streets in New York and every other sanctuary city. As a matter of fact, every sanctuary city, we're going to triple the workforce. We're going to flood the zone with officers. If we can't arrest them in the jail, we'll arrest them in the community. If we can't arrest them in the community, we'll arrest them at their work site. We're going to triple work site enforcement operations. We're going to flood the zone. We're going to take these public safety threats off the streets with your help or without your help.
Now, speaking of AOC, Tom, she actually mentioned you in a town hall last week. Watch.
When we first did one of these seminars, Tom Homan, then acting director of ICE, said that he was going to threaten to refer me to DOJ because I'm using my free speech rights in order to advise people of their constitutionally guaranteed protections. And he may want to do it again today. And to that I say, come for me.
Nobody's coming for you.
Tom, come for me, she said.
I take pleasure. I can live with her mind rent-free every day. But we all know exactly what she's doing. Like I just said, she's educating the worst of the worst, how to invade law enforcement. But the tables have now turned. She's educating people how to get prosecuted. Because you have a final order, it is illegal to not comply with that order. It's a crime to take steps to not comply with ICE removal orders or not comply with ICE actions take you in custody. You can't hinder your own removal that was ordered by the federal judge. I would like AOC to read Title 8, United States Code 1253, because it's starting tomorrow.
Do you anticipate other arrests of other judges across the country who are pulling these shenanigans by sneaking them out the back, Jack?
Out the back.
I think some sanctuary cities, you're going to see more judges make a very bad decision. I've said from day one, you cannot support ICE. You can support sanctuary cities all you want. But if you cross that line of impediment, which is a felony, if you cross that line of knowingly harboring, concealing illegal alien from ICE, that's a felony. We're going to ask the DOJ to prosecute. I'm not a prosecutor, but we're certainly going to ask for those prosecutions. You know, the Democrats said forever, no one's above the law. No one's above the law, but they want a different set of rules for illegal aliens. You said it in your monologue. The whole zero tolerance thing, right? They didn't want families separated when a parent was prosecuted. Kids can't go to jail with parents. But as a cop, when I started my career, I separated U.S. citizen families all the time when a U.S. citizen parent went to jail. U.S. citizen families are separated 1,000 times across this country every day. But they want a different set of rules for the illegal aliens. And as far as removal of USC children, you're right. We sent 3 children with their mothers who requested their baby children go with them. If we didn't do it, then the story would be ICE is separating families again. You can't win with these people.
No, they keep contradicting themselves, but, you know, that's just the way their life rolls. Tom, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
The NYPD is asking for help finding 3 suspects accused of attacking police.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. It is currently 2:45 a.m. And of course, today's date is the 8th of May, 2025. Now, I want to talk about illegal immigration, but if you ask Laken Riley's parents and everybody who has experienced really grave consequences because of illegal aliens in the country, they definitely will tell you deport all of them. Okay. And as the president of the United States, Donald Trump, he was elected because the people want him to secure the border, bring back great economy, lower inflation, and he's trying his best, but it's not going to happen so quick, so fast. It's never going to happen fast. But with this illegal migrant, they're now saying that judges are sneaking and hiding illegal migrants. What in the world is going on here?
Police in Times Square on Friday night with makeshift weapons, including an umbrella, a basketball. What happened on Friday night was horrific. The officers, thankfully, are okay. 5 of the other suspects are in custody.
Our detectives got right to work and within hours identified members of a violent group known as Los Diablos de 42, a subset of Tren de Aragua. Several of them are listed in our gang database, and that's one of the reasons that we caught many of them so quickly.
Sources tell Fox the youngest suspect is just 12 years old. The New York Post reports that he was arrested last year when he was 11, the accused ringleader behind robberies in Central Park. NYPD Chief of Department John Schell joins me now. Good to have you back, Chief. Thank you for coming in today. I know you guys are busy. I guess there's a frustration on the part of New Yorkers as to why we can't round up these kids and get them off the street.
Well, we've been dealing with them for 2 years with Tren de Agua. Same situation. These are violent. We call them kids. We like the kids are not violent, but they are. They're 12 to 19-year-old kids that are doing wolf pack robberies. Can you imagine being surrounded in Central Park by 10 of these kids? Or on the subway like we show videos today? Yep. We have to come to the realization that some kids are very dangerous to our society, and they have to be taken off the street and rehabilitated. One of the kids we arrested, of the 5 so far, back in November, tried to rob a 77-year-old woman of a chain on the subway, and when he couldn't get it, he pushed her onto the tracks.
Why was he back out on the street?
The juvenile justice system does not work in our city to the extent that it could. We want to help all kids. We don't arrest any kids, teenagers. But again, like I said, we got to come to the realization some of these kids are extremely
Why can't they be deported?
dangerous.
These kids are here illegally, correct?
Right, correct. We are firm in our stance, from the mayor to the police department. We don't care about your status. Your status is criminal. You serve your penalties, you go to jail for your crimes, and then if you're a migrant on top of that, you forfeit your right to be here. You should be removed from our city, from our country.
So why aren't they?
It's the process that I don't know why it's not working.
ICE, sanctuary laws, what's holding you back from, I mean, this group, if they're connected to Tren de Aragua, that is now considered a terrorist organization in this country. Isn't that enough to get them out?
Well, our sanctuary city laws are there. We cannot enforce civil enforcement. We can't. We work with our federal partners every day for criminal investigations, and when that takes place, that can take its course. But as far as the civil deportation, we are not allowed by law. We cannot. Under no circumstances are we allowed.
So there's a mayor's election coming up. Do you think that will change?
Well, listen, our mayor, Eric Adams, he's clear on this. He wants to be able to remove violent people from our city, regardless of who you are, right? Jail or jail in my.
Let's go over this again, because I just really want to understand. So these kids are throwing projectiles at police officers. They're robbing old ladies on the subway, surrounding people in Central Park. Why have we found them? And if we can round them up based on the fact that they are criminals, and you say the mayor wants to remove criminals, why can't we remove them?
Well, the criminal piece, they have to remove and go to, in this case, juvenile detention secure facilities until they serve their time in that arena. What ICE does outside of that, that's what they can do. We can't help with the deportation.
But they can all be sent to the juvenile center.
Absolutely.
If they're apprehended.
We need the judges to say no probation where you can walk out. Some of you have to stay in a secure juvenile facility so they cannot harm New York City. These are our families, our friends, our kids. This is not acceptable under any circumstance. And when you walk through the timeline of what happened the other night, our cops standing there for a post, a big boxing event going on.
Outrage.
And Wolfpack tries to attack 3 kids. We get pelted, but our gang database allowed us to know who they were within hours.
Which some people want to get rid of, including someone who is second in command in the city, right?
Our city council wants to get rid of our gang database.
Yeah,
our gang database saves lives.
Wake up. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. Let's hope you can, your guys can round these young people up so they're no longer a threat to them or anyone else. Thank you very much, Chief.
So another element on the immigration crackdown unfolding here in New York City. The mayor, Eric Adams, now appealing a temporary court order that keeps federal ICE agents off of Rikers Island. That's the city's largest jail. It's an island itself, right? Preventing the arrest of criminal migrants. Meanwhile, another island, President Trump is pushing to rebuild and reopen Alcatraz as a federal detention center. That place has been closed for more than 60 years. Former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is back with us today, and retired NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow. And gentlemen, thank you for being here. Very interesting debate. Want to get into it right now and let you guys want to hear you out, okay? When Tom Homan was when he was nominated for his current position, what he said was repeatedly is that if you do not give us access to the prisons in America, we're not going to get the criminals out of America who he expects to do harm if free. Right now on Rikers Island, which has worked pretty well, I do believe, and I think it was your order that ordered it closed. It hasn't happened yet, and the idea was to build 5 different jails, 1 in each borough throughout the city of New York. Paul, to you first. I don't believe the city of New York is going to allow Homan access to Rikers Island. It's going to take a judge on a very high post to grant that. If you do not get access, what happens to the safety and security of the people here in New York long term?
So under New York City sanctuary laws, you cannot notify ICE unless the perpetrator has been convicted of a crime, and comes under the rubric of a series of violent felonies. So what happens? Almost uniformly in this city, excuse me, if you're charged with a felony, it gets knocked down to a misdemeanor. So right there, we can't notify ICE, okay? So that's off the board. So when you read about wannabe gangsters who were getting rolled up in Times Square, as we saw recently, who were 12, 13 years old, the reason you can't notify is because they are not convicted yet. There's no place to put them in a juvie system, and that's why they're right out. So under the law, you're not allowed to put, that is the New York City law, you're not allowed to put ICE in Rikers. You can't pick them up on the street because there's nobody to notify. They go in, they go right back out. Right now, as we speak, the most protected class in all of America is an underage criminal migrant in New York City. 3 hots in a cot, we welcome you here, and there's no mechanism to get them out.
3 hot meals in a cot. Got it.
3 hots in a cot. Okay. Any response to that? But also, what was the thinking behind closing Rikers and putting more jails within where people live?
Well, Rikers is a mess. It's 85 years old, I think, the facility. It's been horrible for the people who work there, for the correction officers. It's been horrible for the inmates. We've seen a huge number, unfortunately, of deaths and suicides there. We've seen a lot of violence towards correction officers, which is absolutely unacceptable. But a lot of people believe across the spectrum it comes back to this horribly ancient facility that's just not built for rehabilitation, doesn't work for the people who work there. And so what we said is, let's decentralize this, build modern jails that actually can support the work.
I think that makes sense. The problem, the pushback on that would be, well, just to make improvements to Rikers. You know, Rikers does not interfere with a single neighborhood in New York City. But if you were to take the plan and close it and open up 5 different jails, well, now you're impacting 5 different neighborhoods.
Yeah, Bill, I think part of the issue is, what are we trying to do with the correction system? Why is it even called the correction system, right? So I think there are some bad people in the world. We might all agree on this point. I think there are some bad people.
Including these criminal illegal migrants.
Well, listen, I'm saying I'm not someone who believes everyone can be turned into an angel. I do believe there's a lot of people's lives can be turned around. I think that's the whole reason it's called a correction system rather than just, you're locked up for the rest of your life, no matter what you did. So the idea is, do we have jails that actually help us to get people to become good citizens again, or do we have jails that are only making it worse? I think Rikers is one of those places that just doubled down. If someone went in a criminal, they became more of a criminal while they're there. So the idea of these borough-based jails, 1 in each borough, is make it a better modern facility that could focus on rehabilitation. Also, you want people's families to come visit them. You want to get people to want to be part of the community again and be normal citizens again. That was part of the idea.
Okay, but just on the ICE factor, do you understand what Paul is saying? That it seems like it's out of balance, that the criminals are giving all of these opportunities, and the citizens of the city are saying, what about us?
Yeah, no, Paul's got a good point. I have no problem when, and thank you for your service to New York City, by the way. I got no problem when someone says, something's broken here, we need to fix it. Clearly, look, the idea of the law we passed said, here's 170, I think that was number 170 violent or serious crimes. You do one of these things, you should be deported. We'll call ICE. We'll say, please take this person. But we believe in due process. And this is a fundamental question we all have to ask ourselves as Americans. For 250 years, our Constitution has said we don't make decisions just based on allegation. We do it when there's actually been due process. And that's for everyone, right?
Okay, all right.
But to finish the point, I think Paul's got a good point. The juveniles end up being in a particular category that we need to address better. And I don't like, we've seen too much revolving door in New York City and New York
All right,
State.
but Mr. Mayor,
I think some of our state laws need to be fixed.
One
too.
was 16, one was 17. You signed the raise the age law, so
No, that
we
wasn't
can't
me,
do
my
anything
friend.
with those two.
Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Raise the age in New York
Raise
City
the age is the
has been
state of New
bumped
York.
up
That was
twice.
Andrew Cuomo. I want you to.
All right, so
get us,
but you,
I know
supported
Italians.
it. I read your statement. You supported it. Number one. Number two, in moving the jails to the boroughs, your administration cut the jail beds 30 to 40%. You're saying you believe that there are people who are bad in this world. Right now, we got 6,500 people in Rikers. We don't lock anybody up now. We're going to go down 3,000. Most of them are going to have to be murderers. And by the way, again, it's only upon conviction that we're going to get them out.
Murderers
so as a result, they're still running around.
Murderers don't go to Rikers. You know a lot about the criminal justice.
They do when they're arrested, and they do when they're down to be adjudicated.
And where do they go after that? To state
They go
prisons,
upstate, and then they come down to be adjudicated.
And what's happening now in New York City, I give Commissioner Jessica Tisch, the NYPD commissioner, a lot of credit, and the women and men of the NYPD. Crime has gone down precipitously, especially this first quarter of 2025.
Needs to go down more.
100%, Bill. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. But this quarter had the lowest number of shootings in the first quarter of a year in history in New York City. Something's working. Let's give credit where
A
credit
lot
is
of
due.
things that aren't working are the quality of life problems, where you cannot actually. You could. It's.
Wait, that's a different topic, though, Dana.
I think it is I think it's
Same topic.
related.
Of course it is. It's the same revolving door. You have migrant crimes who are coming in who are underage or even of age, right? There's nobody to notify. So as a result, we don't lock anybody up, but we do lock up the toothpaste. You've seen the videos. They come in, they walk right out. There's absolutely no recourse. And the idea was, we can't notify ICE because migrants who have been the victims of crimes are going to be afraid to come to the police. Now, that's laudable. The problem is this. They prey upon their own, and the victims know it. So the victims of the crimes are afraid to go to the police because they know this guy's going to get right back out. He's going to come back out at me. And by the way, look at what happened in Milwaukee. With that judge, what she did, that's institutionalized in New York City law. You can't come into my court.
The judge who allowed the defendant to walk out the back door.
Right. You have to have a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. And furthermore, you can't come in a city courtroom. So as a result, she grabs him, she snakes him out the side door. The victims of the crime, 2 women, and it's always women.
They're sitting in the courtroom.
We're sitting in the courtroom. That's literally the law in New York City. That's what we aspired to. That's what we're living with.
No, I disagree with that.
Gentlemen, listen, this is a great discussion.
We got to have a rematch.
One that will continue, and we can do round 2 next time, okay? But
Lots
Paul,
at stake.
Bill, thank you for coming in today.
This is not like a rematch thing. This is just like protect the people that voted you in. What do you mean we're going to rematch? This ain't rematch. This is like common sense. Like, Jasmine Crockett, ladies and gentlemen. She's the new star.
Critics
in Democratic
are
Party.
once again calling out Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett over her questionable comments. Here's what she told college graduates during a commencement speech. A commencement speech. Children's futures, right? This was over the weekend.
There are people that are going to tell you that there is not a table in which there is a seat for you. But I am here to remind you of Montgomery and those folding chairs. Let me tell you that we know how to use a chair.
Okay.
Whether we pulling it up or we doing something else with it.
Now I'm watching the faces of the wise gentlemen behind her, and they are not flinching. I don't know if that landed the way she wanted it to, even in a crowd she thought she controlled. This isn't the first time Jasmine Crockett has been called out for her word choices. Last month, she used interesting, nasty language when describing President Trump in a post about former Vice President Kamala Harris's election loss. Here she is.
Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot mess.
It's Ted Cruz. I mean, like, this dude has to be knocked over the head, like, hard, right? All I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down.
You could speak directly to Elon Musk. What would you say?
Disgusting. That Hot Wheels comment was about Governor Abbott of Texas, who uses a wheelchair. She's gross. Jasmine Crockett is not the only Democrat to use dangerous rhetoric during President Trump's second term.
This is what kicking the out of fascism looks like.
Total bull.
The fact is, they're all trying to be like Trump. You hate this guy. You tell people not to vote for this guy. You tell the world, everybody, vote for us because we're not Trump. Yet, you're trying to be like Trump. Using words like this. He's a natural. You're not. Everybody sees behind these guys. They're trying to be Trump, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to win elections by being ratchet.
Absolute bull.
I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption. But I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace.
In focus now, Tommy Lahren, Fox News contributor and Outkick host. Tommy, can you imagine if a Republican went out on the street corner and said some of the things that these Democrats are saying?
Well, right, Harris, this is what they're doing because for them, it's working. It's not working to advance the interests of the American people or the Democrat Party, but it's working to advance their interest in being famous. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and Jasmine Crockett really is the queen of that. Why would she stop, Harris? Why would she stop speaking like this, talking like this, saying those things? It's getting her on cable news. It's getting her on the late night shows. For her, this isn't about legislative priorities. I couldn't tell you one legislative position that Jasmine Crockett holds or what she's doing for the people of Texas, but I could tell you probably 5 or 10 of the most disgusting things that she has said, either on cable news or in her tweets or at a commencement address. This is working for her. They want fame more than they want to advance the interests of the American people, and that's why the Democrat Party is so lost right now.
Well, look, the Republican who's running against her in her district in Texas next time around, Sheldon Daniels, has said you ought to take a look at her financials. He's not even worried about this sideshow that she's running. He's like, these are some baseline problems that voters need to know about. It's something I'm covering, I'm looking into. Meanwhile, Bill Belichick is reportedly sidelining his younger girlfriend to save his reputation. The two went viral for some interesting reasons during an interview last week.
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
No?
No.
Jordan Hudson is heavily involved in multiple aspects of Bill Belichick's life, which include reportedly acting as his de facto agent over the past few months. Reportedly, she's the COO or CCO of his business or foundation. He's got a lot of money. Page 6 reports Hudson is running his brand even. A source told the outlet it's amateur hour and it's showing they don't know what they are doing and trying to control everything. They don't trust anyone else. He's handed off the ball to her. Tommy, your reaction?
Oh, Harris, this is such a sad story because this is a legendary coach who's accomplished so much, and now this is what we're talking about. Not even talking about his book, talking about his 24-year-old girlfriend. But when we talk about what's going on here, it sounds to me like Bill Belichick might be a love hostage. He's not the first person that's succumbed to maybe whatever this is, and he will not be the last. But I'll tell you what, when we're talking about this and her assuming so much control and this being all over the headlines, Harris, I can't help but think this is getting more attention than whoever was controlling President Joe Biden for 4 years. I mean, it is similar. Obviously, we don't know the capacity of either, but it's really interesting to me that people are all up in arms that a 24-year-old is controlling her boyfriend, but no one seemed to care about who is controlling the president and the leader of the free world. Very interesting, the coverage on both of these stories.
Look, let them have love is what I say. Their relationship is one thing, but he works for a university now as a coach, and that reputation matters. So we'll see what happens next. Nike is facing a lot of backlash following some recent scandals. One of the company's billboards in London has been removed over Holocaust comparisons. And it's also been more than 2 weeks since Outkick reported that Nike is allegedly funding a child transgender athlete study. Nike is still virtually silent on all of it. Women's activist wear brand XXXY Athletics shared this.
What are you doing, Nike? Why are you funding research about how to impair young boys? We're challenging them to do the right thing.
and to challenge consumers to vote with their dollars. This is a brand that does not align with your values. Stop buying it.
Congressman Burgess Owens posted, "The American people deserve answers. If this is true, it's not just wrong, it's pure evil. Time to speak up, Nike." Here's Outkick's Clay Travis.
A lot of American consumers should be flooding Nike and asking the question, what in the world are you thinking? The best man or the best woman should win. Not in any way should Nike be involved in trying to basically sterilize young kids to see what the impact is for athletics. This is, to me, reprehensible. It's indefensible.
The most recent issues are just the latest in a string of Nike controversies dating back to 2019, and they include the alleged use of forced labor, abuse, and unfair treatment of their pregnant athletes. Nike is a mess, Tommy.
Nike's a mess, and
that's the thing. That's why I never envy nobody. I never envy anybody. Okay, you got wealth, God is gonna make mine. I never envy anybody. I'm never jealous of yours. I'm never jealous of nothing, because you just never know. You just never know. If you were a small business, you would say, you know what? I want to be like Nike in future. If you had a designer brand that you were building, your goal is to be like Nike or Louis Vuitton or whatever. But you would never know the types of causes this guy's fund, the types of causes this huge businesses fund. It's just wild. Why would you want to change what God made just because you have enough wealth to do it? It's crazy, man.
all of this is true about funding these trans studies. This is worse than Kaepernick. This is worse than the Bud Light debacle. This is the worst thing we've seen for a company, I think, certainly in my lifetime, because Clay is exactly right. I hope people understand here what these allegations are and this funding. It means that they are essentially testing young boys and seeing if they transition them, they use puberty blockers and other hormone therapies, if they can essentially debilitate young male athletes to the point where they won't have an advantage over female athletes. This is going to have lasting implications in these young people's lives, and all for what? To try to normalize the trans athlete conversation and try to excuse or legitimize boys competing against girls. That's really what these studies are going towards. Nike needs to be honest. If they really do believe in this research, they need to be really honest and forthright about why they believe it. Tell your consumer, tell your customer, because nothing about this is okay.
Yeah, I mean, all of what you just said and more as we cover this. Tommy, great reporting, by the way, at Outkick by all of you. Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Whoa. Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Y'all want to keep going, or y'all want to just call it a night? You want to call it a night, or you want to keep going?
But first, brains versus bluster. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Made a lot of news last night with Secretary Scott Bessent, and he doesn't need money. But given the aggressive stupidity he had to deal with for the past 2 days on Capitol Hill, the man deserves hardship pay. Mad Maxine Waters has been in Washington since, the Paleozoic age, but still doesn't understand that the federal government actually hires these things called temporary employees, such as were hired at Musk's direction to find waste, fraud, and abuse.
Did all the individuals working with Doge who were given access to Treasury's and CFPB's computer databases receive all of the required clearances and security training before they were granted access?
Again, they were granted read-only access at Treasury. There were two.
So let me just say,
Doge employees.
Please, you can't filibuster here. This is not the filibuster playground. And so what you did was you let these strangers into our Treasury with access to all of the data, all of the personnel information, and you just opened the door. Why'd you do that?
No, ma'am. They were Treasury employees.
No, despite his valiant effort, Secretary Bessent could not reason with Maxine, no headroom.
Are you saying today in front of this committee that all of them were Treasury employees, that the 25-year-old who's being identified, who worked for Elon Musk, was allowed into the Treasury? Was that person there?
He was a Treasury employee, as was Tom Kraus, the senior person on the Doge team. There were only two people.
There were Doge employees also.
Sorry?
Do you know, were you aware that there were Doge employees coming into our Treasury getting all of our personal information?
Well, ma'am, there is no such thing as a Doge employee. There were Treasury employees.
Uh-oh. Oh, my God. I mean, circulation not getting to her head for some reason. If this were a boxing match, the ref would have called the fight after, 60 seconds in? But the parade of ignorance just kept rolling.
Tell the American people, specifically, which countries are you close to striking deals with?
I'm sorry, Congresswoman, but that would not benefit the United States.
No. I'm asking you a question based on the statement that you made on CNBC.
And I am telling you that it would be detrimental to the interest of the United States for me to answer that question.
Why will that be detrimental?
Because as the negotiations may still be in process as we speak, as we are not at the end of the week yet, I am sure that you through your question, would not want to compromise the U.S. negotiating.
Reclaiming my time.
Would you?
Reclaiming my time. What on earth? Is this really the best the Democrats can do?
Yeah. In congressional testimony yesterday, you said the U.S. has not started negotiating with China on tariff reductions. Does that continue to be your position, yes or no?
As you may have read.
Yes or no, sir?
As you may have read in the press, I will be going to Switzerland, and the negotiations will begin on Saturday.
Okay, so the president told you that that will be your answer today.
Oh my. Okay, what's really scary here
what
is that her staff
what in the world
wrote her those questions. Your tax dollars at work, my friends. Now, struggling to get their footing, Democrats flail away in these hearings. Happens all the time. And they're looking for their viral moments, trying to find some line that will land, presumably, you think, with middle-class voters that they've alienated over the years. And what better way to build bridges to the working class than to attack someone who worked his way to the American dream?
A number of my colleagues have brought it up about elite, the coastal elites. Where did you go to school?
Sorry? I grew up in Little River, South Carolina.
And what university did you graduate?
500.
You graduated from Yale. You were part of Wolfhead's Society.
Congressman,
one of the big three.
Congressman, I worked 3 jobs to put myself to Yale.
Believe me, I grew up just as poor as you did. You're a billionaire that went to Yale.
Of course, Congressman Vargas talked over Bessent because he didn't want America to hear what Bessent was saying. Yes, he's a billionaire, but he's one who put himself through Yale, working multiple jobs, as he tried to say, as his friends were backpacking through Europe. Again, Democrats are offering nothing new under the sun. They tried the same nonsense, remember, with J.D. Vance during the campaign. How did that work out for them? So it's crazy. Democrats are incapable, it seems, of changing tactics, of learning from failure. They're weighed down by a deficit of discernment and a surplus of stupidity.
Most of all your testimony is always about the tax cuts and cutting costs, and it's always about tax cuts, and it's always about the rich. But nothing is ever said about poor.
No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime.
Sir, I read your testimony. That's not anywhere in here.
Deductibility.
That is not in here.
Deductibility.
I am referring to your testimony and what I've listened to.
She's either a dullard or a liar. If Trump doesn't care about the poor, if he's only for the rich, how does she explain that Wall Street, the billionaire's playground, is the group most furious with Trump about his tariffs? And if the performance of Garcia, Vasquez, Vargas didn't impress you, maybe the incisive questions of Greg Meeks will.
Who was the president in 2024?
One believes President Biden.
One believes? You one of those non-believers that the election, the American people didn't vote?
I am not.
You're not? You said one believes? Do you believe in the Constitution of the United States and it should be abided
I believe in the Constitution of the United States.
So you believe in it without any second thought. You don't have to think about it. You believe in it and you would abide by it. Is that correct?
I have and I do, sir.
Okay. But do you know that a president has said he may or may not? He don't know?
But then, just when you thought that the hard
Oh,
left...
man. This is way too funny, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, a little background on Scott Bassett. His daddy was a real estate agent. He went bankrupt. And, of course, Scott Bassett had to work his way through college. But one thing most people don't know is Scott Bassett is actually gay. Yep. He is gay. And he's married to John Freeman. Yeah. Because people are saying, well, Trump doesn't like the LGBTQ community. Nah, that's cap. You can be whoever you want to be, but don't ask to be treated special. Okay, you're just like every one of us out here trying to live this life, trying to do right by God. Okay, so don't be here acting like you're some special breed because you are in the LGBTQ community. You ain't special. Okay, you're like the same. Just like everybody else on the street trying to get on with life. Okay, stop trying to be special because I'm in the LGBTQ community, so treat me specially. Man, get your ass out of here.
Lost? Well, the squad stepped up.
Yes or no? Mr. Secretary, do you know what a car seat is?
I have 2 children, yes.
I figured as much. It's correct, you and your husband have 2 children.
The administration had already hinted that it's considering exempting baby products, Congresswoman, from the tariffs, which shows the Trump administration's flexibility. It's a good thing. But Congressman Presley was there to grandstand and inadvertently made Trump's point that we're way too dependent on China for essential goods.
There have consistently been more than 3.5 million babies born in the United States. That means millions of families in this country are doing what? Buying a car seat because it's essential and it is the law of the land. Approximately 9 out of every 10 car seats in the U.S. come from China.
Well, here we go. The party that lives and breathes for abortion is finally standing up for the kids. Okay, I'll take that as progress. So today and yesterday, these Democrats, one after another, humiliated themselves. For 4 long years under Biden, the entire executive branch was focused not on raising your standard of living, not on our long-term financial viability, not on countering China, but on misplaced woke priorities. They were asleep at the switch.
Under the previous administration, we had 3 of the largest bank failures in U.S. history. 2 weeks before that, the Financial Stability Oversight Council published a report that said that climate was the biggest threat to the financial system, not the deposit volatility, not over-leveraged bond portfolios. So we are promoting common sense, back to basics.
Democrats went from being the party of the little guy and common sense to being the party of hedge funds, Hollywood, and Silicon Valley. And as President Trump and his team have spent the last few months developing a program, it's very ambitious, to build a strong middle class that we all used to know growing up. Liberals have nothing but old talking points from the 80s. They have no plan B, they have no plan C, only plan F for failure.
Plan F.
And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean.
Oh, man, she said only plan F. Yeah, that's right. Only plan F, ladies and gentlemen. All right, conclave is on. They're trying to pick the next pope. Do you guys know who's going to be the next pope? I don't know.
Which are families that have lost their loved ones due to illegal aliens that have committed crimes of violence against them. I'm going to introduce them and let them have an opportunity to speak as well. But the first one is Jim Walden. Then Brian and Aaron McCann are coming up as well, Kathy Zander and Nancy Palentia. All of these families have lost their loved ones, their family members, their children, and people that were very, very dear to them. Brian's brother Denny was crossing a street in Chicago when he was struck by an illegal alien drunk driver who kept on driving for a block while dragging Denny on the road. That alien then fled the scene. Both killers had been previously protected from discovery and deportation by sanctuary policies. Jim's son, Jimmy, was a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, and he was killed on a motorcycle ride by a twice deported illegal alien who had left his injured stepson in the car while he fled to get away from prosecution. Those two men both lost individuals because of illegal aliens that had been protected from discovery and deportation. Also with me today is Kathy Zander. Her son John died of fentanyl poisoning. John is one of the many Americans whose lives have been cut short because of the lack of enforcement against those who perpetuate drugs and the infiltration of its trafficking by cartels and other illegal gangs into this state. Nancy Platania is the mother of Nick. Nick tragically lost his life as well from a fentanyl overdose. And Nick worked every day to get other people clean from drugs and started his own business before his life was tragically taken by the drugs that are funneled into these American communities every day. But we're standing here on this block today because this is the block where a young woman was killed. Just a couple of houses away from here, Emma Schaefer was brutally stabbed and murdered by an illegal alien who was released into the United States by the Biden administration. He had already been previously arrested for kidnapping and had been released, and then he had entered back into our country under the Biden administration to perpetuate more violence and eventually took Emma's life. This illegal alien, his name is Gabriel Callisto Picardo, already had a felony kidnapping, and then when he was released, he should have been deported immediately. This murder and the illegal alien has now been on the run for 2 years. He has not been brought into incarceration, and we need not just the governor of this state, but also the partnership of local law enforcement to get this family justice for losing their daughter, Emma. Since 2017, Illinois has been a sanctuary state. The results have been absolutely disastrous for people who live here. In 2020, Governor Pritzker expanded access to taxpayer-funded free health care for illegal aliens. It has cost the citizens of Illinois $1.6 billion. He has been incentivizing illegals to come here and to live in this state. In 2020,
The thing I always say, no matter what you say about the Trump administration, you can never say they're not effective. They're coming here every day doing press conferences telling you exactly what they're working on. Come on, man. Come on. I get it, you're not a conservative, but you got to give them their flowers, man. These guys are working hard, and they're showing us exactly how hard they're working.
Biden didn't leave President Trump a slate of crumbling airports and blaming him for the flightmare rocking Newark. United Airlines is urging people to consider
and what's going on in New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen? Who lives in New Jersey? What is going on in Newark? What in the world is going on with these flights? Like, everybody is just getting delays in Newark's airport. What is going on here?
Airport as passengers deal with hundreds of delays and cancellations. Chuck thinks it's outrageous.
It's outrageous. And it's because of Trump and Doge. FAA has been cut. Employees have been cut. Top people have left in exasperation at what Trump is trying to do. If there's any place where Trump chaos, which is so typical of this administration, can really cause loss of life, it's at the FAA.
But the Duff man is setting the record straight after Joe and company put fixing racist roads over updating our ancient air traffic control system.
They have made no investments in the system that we now see having issues in Newark. On top of that, they were focused on things like racist roads. They literally spent time concerned about the word cockpit and changing cockpit to flight deck. It's not funny. The whole system needs to be redone.
Racist roads, my favorite ice cream flavor. Judge, he makes a great point. Mayor Pete, you can't stop blaming people. He was focused on racist roads. What did Chuck Schumer do? He's been in power for, he's been in office for decades.
I think I counted it once. I think I counted he worked with like 7 presidents.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The Democrats don't get anything done. They spend a lot of money, but they don't do anything. Classic example is the money that they use for the EV chargers. Remember the billions, whatever, and they got 2 chargers done in 4 years. But there was a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill and a package, actually, the largest in history, $5 billion for air traffic control, $1 billion spent on that, but only 20% of it was actually used for air traffic control. So what we've got is the GAO, the General Accounting Office, has been saying for the last 2 years that it's dangerous, it's outdated, they got floppy disks, 51 of 138 systems are unsustainable, and this is all during the Biden administration. They said they had no plan, under oath, to modernize the projects for at least another 10 years. And by the way, DOJ did not cut air traffic controllers nor critical safety personnel. That's all.
You know, Leslie, if you see how they're describing air traffic control in the airports, isn't that just a kind of like what you'd expect after seeing the A block? That was your president for 4 years. So would you have crumbling infrastructure despite all the trillion-dollar spending bill?
No, because when Pete Buttigieg was in charge of the Transportation Department, as Secretary of Transportation, he hired 2,000 people. DOJ has fired. Let's look at, people say, when were they hired? Let's look at who they fired. Specifically, maintenance mechanics, specifically aeronautical infrastructure specialists. Specifically, DOJ took people out who are specifically responsible for this type of coordination. They say what happened in Newark, we are seeing an increase in problems. And there weren't these problems in the past 4 years. Since January, there have been 5 significant crashes. That hasn't been since 2009. So if everything happened in the last 4 years and nothing happened during the last 4 years, I'm not buying it. And additionally, because it comes down to 2 things, staffing and equipment. And specifically, they say in Newark, it comes down to 1 copper wire. Pete Buttigieg specifically wanted the 50 airports in the United States that need to have fiber, that need to have internet and not copper, and he wanted those changed. People seem to think that, anybody who is in charge of the FAA can just, and even the president, can just, write a check and hand it off. No, they can't. We have something called Congress that those funds have to be approved with and from. Legislation that has to go through there. So, for this administration right now to blame the former administration, I'm sorry. When it's happening on your watch, and if this were a Democrat, I'd say the same thing. When it's happening on your watch, you are responsible. The buck stops with you. Stop deflecting blame. Show some solutions, specific solutions, so that we can all be safe. I flew into JFK last night, 3.5-hour delay. But I am here.
Thanks, Obama. You said something about 5 crashes being the worst. What did you mean by that?
Since January, there have been 5 significant incidents.
And that's the worst, you said?
Since 2009, yes.
I would like a check on that. Jesse.
Well, I won't be providing that check. But you are right and you are wrong, Leslie. Let's begin with how wrong you are, though. Do you agree with me that Axios is not a Republican publication? I'll just answer for you. The answer is yes. Axios blames Biden. Axios says this is what happened. Axios says they moved the air traffic controllers that were overseeing Newark and put them in Philly. And that's what caused this personnel chaos. And they're doing long-time maintenance work.
The truth is, I don't care who caused all of these, okay? Nobody cares. Stop shifting blames or whatnot. Get it fixed. People need to go see their families. People need to get to work. People need to go see, the people that they love. So there's no way you should have flights delayed 4 days. What if there's some sort of emergency and somebody wants to go see a dying family member? Yeah, stop shifting blames. Get it to work. All right.
on one of the runways. So there's one runway in Newark.
Right.
And I hate to make this about me, but it has to be.
Of course.
I had a 1-hour delay going to D.C. When I came back, 4-hour delay, had to take the train. I'm flying out west in 2.5 weeks from Newark, my home airport. I'm freaking out. So they need to fix this. Duffman needs to fix this. That's where you're right, Leslie. We can point fingers all we want. We know it's Biden's problem, but it's Trump's problem now. And this is like, I would treat this like the pandemic. Emergency powers, Defense Production Act, you just surge everybody there. It's a major airport. People don't care if a Republican, Democrat, if they're 5 hours late to where they're going, they're going to blame Trump. So he needs to fix this. It has nothing to do with my flight to California in about 2.5 weeks. Nothing to do with
They had similar communication issues in August of last year under the Biden administration.
I had an hour delay last night. The champagne was flat in my Gulfstream.
Can I borrow your jet?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, I thought we had something here.
No. Where am I? Dana!
Yes.
You were shaking your head a lot.
I was writing everything down. A couple things. One, talking to somebody who works at FAA, the one thing I think we need to clear up. So there's a telecommunications issues and a tech problem. That has been going on for a long time. It needs to be fixed. And I think that, just like with Operation Warp Speed, like, let's just warp speed this thing.
Warp speed it.
Get the Doge guys over there to say,
well.
here's the technology. Well, yeah, anyway. But
Choose
we
a
know that
better
it can't
one.
be done because you have to talk about priorities.
Yeah.
Did Pete Buttigieg make this a priority? Was Biden ever talking about this?
No.
No. Like, what were they talking about? Trains were one of the
Bike
things.
lanes.
The great thing is about Sean Duffy, do you think this guy can manage? They have 9 children. He can manage a lot of things. So he's going to be able to do that. I'm going to say something, though, that hasn't been said yet because that would be providing some new ground. We have started privatizing space travel. I think that the private market could do a better job here.
Mm-hmm.
And you could try this with a few airports, like make them smaller ones and then grow it out. And you could figure out a way to have better retention for people with better salaries that were more competitive, that they're not capped out on a government salary. The East Coast is way oversaturated, but we also want to grow. We want an abundant country where we want to be able to travel for work and pleasure. And so I think we have to rethink things and think big, which this administration can do.
That's a great point. Flying is the only experience that progress has left behind. If you think about everything around us, the speed of the technology everywhere, everything's faster except flying. You're probably right.
Probably.
Maybe. I don't know. I lost interest.
And in 20.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. It is currently 3:35 a.m. and we will continue this tomorrow. Well, earlier. All right, let's see. Okay. Let's do this before we leave. Bernie Sanders, of course, is still fighting oligarchy for like 40 years now. There we go.
Obviously, there is a lot to be passionately against right now, but it has to travel with a clearer picture of what we are for.
Our party is unified in making sure that we stand up and deliver on the promises that we've made to the American people.
We can't just be the party that is against Donald Trump. We have to show people how we are providing an alternative message, especially for our young people that are losing faith.
Well, although he's technically an independent, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has considerable influence in Democratic Party politics, of course. He and New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have been traveling the country trying to unite a progressive movement that took a major hit, frankly, last November. Senator Sanders joins us live here in studio. Welcome back to Special Report.
Good to be with you.
You wrote after the November 6th election this: it should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class. Now it's Latino and black workers as well. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. More than
I agree with what that guy said.
That guy said,
go on record.
100 days in, is it the same thing?
Absolutely. Look, Brett, what we don't do as a nation is take a hard look at where we are on the issues of most relevance to ordinary people. Where are we? In the richest country in the history of the world, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country. We have the highest rate of senior poverty, 22% of seniors in America today trying to get by on $15,000 a year or less. Meanwhile, the people on top have never ever had it so good. One guy owns more wealth than the bottom 53% of the American households. Most people understand that is insane. That is absurd. There is no reason why we should be the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people, why we have a housing crisis, why our kids can't afford to go to college.
So why do you think, and it's our latest Fox News poll, the opinion of the Democratic Party is now at 41% favorable? Why is that? Why is it so underwater?
And the Republicans are a whole lot better.
A little bit better, but not a whole lot, I agree.
I'll tell you why. People understand that the political system in this country is largely corrupt, both parties. Why is that? You know the answer. The answer is that you have billionaires in both political parties determine what legislation gets to the floor and who is the candidate. Right now, let me give you both examples. You're in the Republican Party, and you say, you know what? I don't like this Trump idea of giving massive tax breaks to the rich and cutting Medicaid and education. You get up and say that. What happens to you? The next day, Elon Musk says, I got unlimited amounts of money. We're going to run a candidate in a primary against you. Democratic Party side, what happens if somebody says, you know what? Maybe it's not a good idea to fund Netanyahu's war machine, which is creating starvation for children in Gaza. I'm going to vote against that. Next day, AIPAC is going to be running against you. We have a corrupt campaign finance system. Billionaires in both political parties are calling the tunes. The American people understand that.
You mentioned Gaza. I just want to point out there was a House hearing on anti-Semitism at non-Ivy League universities today up on the Hill. You're Jewish. You've expressed, obviously, a lot of concern about what's happening in Gaza. But what do you make about what's happening on college campuses?
Look, anti-Semitism is a vile and disgusting ideology, resulting in 6 million people getting killed under Hitler. But let's be clear. To criticize what the Netanyahu government is doing right now, which is deliberately starving children. 50,000 people have already died. Children are starving to death right now. It is not anti-Semitic to point that out.
I want to play a clip from this BBC interview from former President Biden. Take a listen.
It was a hard decision, but...
Regrets there?
No, I think it was the right decision. I think that... Well,
there we go.
It was just a difficult decision.
But you shouldn't have taken it earlier.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know how that would have made much difference.
So should President Biden have gotten out of that race earlier?
But I'm not going back a year.
You're not going back?
No, I'm not. I don't want to.
But isn't that a big part of where the Democratic Party is?
No, it's not. It's nothing to do with Biden right now or Kamala Harris. The question is, what is the fundamental issue in politics? Which side are you on? So right now, you have massive income and wealth inequality. You have the rich getting richer. Wealthiest people, large corporations control our economy. Billionaires control our political system. The question is...
Bernie Sanders is flying private jets to talk to 30,000 people, 40,000 people. And he's talking about the rich and the poor. You are the rich.
Do you stand with the working class, with the elderly, with the kids, or do you stand with big money?
Well, that's a great question, because now you have this tariff policy from President Trump. And it's really interesting that some Democrats have now kind of abandoned the pro-progressive thing that they had before, and they're agreeing with the Wall Street Journal editorial page. Do you see that?
Yeah, this is what I think. The idea to say, oh, we believe in unfettered free trade, no tariffs, and some Democrats are saying that, I think that's nonsense. The idea that you arbitrarily one day come up with tariffs on every country on earth for no particular reason, which is going to raise prices in this country, that's also absurd. Not only did I vote against NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China, I helped lead the effort against those. Those were disastrous trade agreements written by corporate America, designed to allow corporations to shut down in America, move to China, move to Mexico, and hire people there at starvation wages. Very bad policy. So I believe in selective tariffs to protect American workers. But the broad tariff proposals that Trump brought forth, that is not the way to proceed.
But if he gets some good deals with big countries like India, South Korea, Japan, and others come to the table with proposals, isn't he moving the needle? Isn't he changing the paradigm?
If you do it selectively, if you have a situation where you're protecting the American consumer, when he says, I'm not concerned about toy prices, I think he doesn't understand what's going on for working class families. So selective.
Of course, these people are going to support him. Some people are like, he's not rich. Anybody who takes private jets, I don't care how they get on the private jet, they are rich. And Bernie is rich. Matter of fact, he's wealthy. He's talking about climate change, but you're flying in jets. If you have the guts to say, save our world, climate is changing, you need to be flying like Superman to your events. You should not be flying in an airplane that pollutes the world even more. Okay? So if you say you want the world to be a better place, you need to be walking to your event. You can't be flying and polluting the world.
Tariffs that protect American workers and industry, good idea. Just across the board tariffs that raise prices, a very bad idea.
You have this tour with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Fight the Oligarchy. You've seen big crowds.
Huge crowds.
Explain it. Why do you think it's happening?
I think, and by the way, we actually have information on this, Brett. It's not just, I'm an independent. We attract a lot of Democrats. It is not just Democrats coming out to our rallies. It is Republicans, it is a lot of independents. And why is that? I think there are a few concerns. Number one, when Trump gets inaugurated and standing behind him are the three wealthiest guys in America, Musk, Bezos, and Zuckerberg, and standing behind them are 13 other billionaires that Trump has appointed to head up major government agencies. People are really saying, really? This is a government of the billionaire class.
This guy is a 1 percentile. I hope you guys know, right? Bernie is amongst the 1 percentile in the world, on Earth. Every country Bernie Sanders goes, he will be in the 1%. To be a 1% earner in the United States in 2025, you need to be making $707,000 annually. $707,000 annually to be a 1 percentile in 2025. Now, there's no way this man flying private jets and is not making this type of money. Now they're going to say, well, people are donating for me to fly. They come on TV and tell you, our kids are suffering. No, your kids are in the richest location. Now, we, on the other hand, we the one feeling the heat. Now you, bro.
Class for the billionaire class. People are worried about that. The other area, big deal, is the movement toward authoritarianism. You don't have a president of the United States suing the media because they did stories you don't like. You don't have federal agents picking up college students who may have come from another country, throwing them into a van, taking them to a detention center without any charges being leveled against them. You don't have the president of the United States saying, a judge ruled against me. We got to impeach that judge. That is called authoritarianism. And I don't care if you're conservative or progressive and middle of the road guy. I would hope we all stand together against that movement toward authoritarian. And lastly, you're seeing policies that Trump and the Republicans are bringing forth where tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to Medicaid.
They claim there's not going to be cuts. They claim they're taking out waste, fraud, and abuse. No. I understand. I understand what you're saying, but that's what they say.
So the eyes of the beholder, waste, fraud. Look, you don't cut $800 billion without really devastating Medicaid, attacking Social Security. so that seniors, disabled seniors, are going to have a hard time getting the program.
But you know, there are a lot of people who look at this and say the government is bloated. It's out of control.
Somebody just said, well, he wasn't born into a ton of money. Anybody who says that is like, what are you thinking about? So it's a sin, or it's supposed to be bad, that Trump's father worked hard for his money and gave his son some money. Isn't that every father's goal, every father's dream, every mother's dream is to be able to leave something for their offspring? What do you mean? Well, he wasn't born into it. So Trump is supposed to say, no, daddy, don't give me the money. I want to go suffer. No. My goal is to get rich and give every dime to my daughter. Okay? Yeah. That's what everybody wants to do. That's why we're all here working our butts off so our daughters and sons can have better tomorrow. What do you mean? Well, he wasn't born into wealth. So what? It's bad to be born into wealth? Isn't that why you're hustling? So you can have some money to pass down to the next generation? Anybody who says, man, you can't be arguing with these folks, man.
It's $37 trillion in debt. Do you think the federal government... Do the federal government, does it need to be cut?
The federal government needs to be made more efficient. In some ways, it should be expanded. In other ways, cut. If you're asking me, is the federal bureaucracy a problem? You're damn right it is. Can we make it more efficient? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Isn't that what Doge was trying to do?
No, but Doge was trying to, you don't make it more efficient by laying off thousands of workers at the Social Security Administration so that seniors can't get their benefits and their concerns addressed in a timely manner. You don't make the system more efficient by threatening to lay off 83,000 workers at the Veterans Administration, which will clearly impact the health care that our veterans receive.
All right, last thing. You know, Alyssa Slotkin, senator from Michigan, she said you shouldn't be using oligarch. It's over people's head. You've gotten criticized from other people. Free Beacon says Bernie Sanders spent $221,000 on private jets fighting the oligarchy tour, paid for by friends of Bernie Sanders. That you've spent millions of dollars in campaign funds on private jet travel over the years. How do you push back on both of those things?
When's the last time you saw Donald Trump during a campaign mode at National Airport?
No. It doesn't. But he's also not.
No. Bernie, you do not get to play that part. Because you were the person that's always saying Trump was born into wealth. So, dear Bernie, why are you taking private jets? Here we go. Let's listen.
Fighting the oligarchy.
No. You run a campaign and you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United waiting, 30,000 people are waiting? That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that. That's what campaign travel is about. We've done it in the past. We're going to do it in the future.
And you think that this is hitting a mark? You think it's scratching the itch that voters want to hear from?
I think at a time when the people on top are doing phenomenally well, when seniors, working class people are struggling, people want to hear action to stand up to the people who have the wealth and the power and create an economy that works for all of us, not just the people on top. Well,
No, bro. You're taking private jets. You got nothing to say about an economy that works for everybody. This economy is already working for you, bro. It's been working for you for years, at least for like 4 decades. Because you've been flying private jet, bro. There's no way. Oh, we're working hard, so this economy is going to be great. No, you're taking private jet. Look at his face. He doesn't even believe what he's saying. Talking about, we got to make this economy better. No, the economy is already excellent for you. That's why you're taking private jet right now. Talking about, man, I got to take that back, man.
You run a campaign and you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United waiting, 30,000 people are waiting? That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that. That's what campaign travel is about. We've done it in the past. We're going to do it in the future.
And you think that this is hitting a mark? You think it's scratching the itch that voters want to hear from?
I think at a time when the people on top are doing phenomenally well, when seniors, working class people are struggling, people want to hear action to stand up to the people who have the wealth and the power and create an economy that works for all of us, not just the people on top.
Well, Senator Sanders, I appreciate you.
Oh my goodness. Let's create an economy that works for all of us. It's already working for you. It's already great for you. That's why you're flying jets. Okay? That's why you're flying jet. But I get it. You got to say things like this to appease your voters and the people that think, oh, Bernie, he's so good. Nah, he ain't good. He's the same as every one of them. Coming out here lying to y'all, talking about an economy that works for everybody. No, you fly jets just like Trump, but you weren't born rich. Okay, you weren't born rich, but you're flying private jet, aren't you? Right. With that being said, thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. All right. For anybody who don't know, Dana is the mother of this channel. God bless you guys. All right. So no stressing Dana. See people stressing Dana out in the chat. No stressing Dana in the chat, y'all. No stressing Dana in the chat. All right. Shout out to C. Shelley. That is another OG on the channel. Shout out to C. Shelley one more time. Now, Dead Star. They're not a moderator or a member, but they're consistent. So I'm going to give them a shout out. Shout out to Dead Star. Shout out to Ellie. Shout out to Mr. Booski. Shout out to Luke. God bless you. And everybody who's watching, who's supporting. God bless you guys. You guys are awesome. Derek, I see you. God bless you. Derek has been consistent as well. Shout out to Derek. Shout out to everybody for tuning in. You guys are awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. Believe in Almighty God. All right. Shout out to the veterans. Thank you to the military guys. You guys protect the homeland. And life is hard. Life can be hard. No matter what happens in your life, never give up. Do not throw in the towel. Yes, I know it can get hard. You could lose people. You could lose your job. You could lose your spouse. Man, you could lose anything in this world. Nothing is guaranteed, but just keep going, man. That's all I can tell y'all. Keep going. Because every one of us, we're going through what we're going through, okay? So just keep going one step at a time. Sometimes the days are darker, but just keep going. Never, ever, ever give up. Never. Regardless of how dark the night is, never give up. All right? I love you guys, man. God bless you. God bless the United States. This is the greatest country on earth. Believe that. I believe that with my whole heart. America is the greatest country on earth. And I hope you feel the same way. But even if you don't feel the same way, thank you for watching. God bless you. And stay safe out there, man. See you guys tomorrow. Actually, today, because it's 3:54. All right. God bless you guys. Also, we have more videos on the video page. So we don't just go live. We don't just stream. We do stream like this, but we also have videos that you can go watch. Binge watch. Okay. Binge watch. All right. Shout out to Rain. It says great channel. God bless you. And shout out to the West Coast James Cisco. He said it's in the West Coast. Shout out to James Cisco in the West Coast. Ange Michelle, God bless you. She says, Jesus Christ is King of Kings, God in the flesh. Yes, sir. All right, with that being said, God bless you. God is the greatest.